Minato Namikaze was an orphan from birth. Even as a little boy going to the academy, he read about the great Hokage and dreamed of becoming one of them. The blonde wanted his children to look at him with pride and admire their father as he did, reading about the heroes of his village and country. Deep down, he himself liked to imagine himself as the son of Shodai-sama or Nadaime-sama. At such moments, he cast aside childishness and began to study even harder. A great father should have a great son, right? The day the future Kunoichi from Uzushiogakure no Sato entered the classroom, he realized that he would become even stronger. But now not only to become Hokage, but also to protect the people who would become close to him, his friends, his wife and children. He was not surprised when the day after he passed the graduation exam, he learned that he had broken the previous record and became the strongest student to ever graduate from the academy. Minato was pleased to hear in casual conversations that he was compared to the genius Tobirama Senju. He also somewhat resembled him in appearance. Although, most likely, I spent too much time imagining him as my father. Now I see a birthmark under the left heel of the right shoulder, young Genin muttered with a tired sigh, looking at himself in the mirror. Namikaze really wanted to be like some Hokage. But here's the problem. He doesn't have Mokuden, he has no kinship with Sweden, and it's better to keep quiet about all 5 elements. Yes, he had his own powerful technique, rasengan, which was recognized as the highest form of Kitaihenka. Control over the shape of chakra. But Nadaime-sama also knew Fuinjutsu well. Protested his beloved, Kushina. But I only know banal explosive seals and storage scrolls. I'm not going to go into the archives, Minato answered resignedly, running his fingers through his hair. Actually, I'm an Uzumaki, Kushina said indignantly. I know Fuinjutsu. It was difficult to master the art of sealing. After all, he didn't have a single gram of the genes of the Scarlet Devils. His persistence, which he had no shortage of, saved him, so it took about 6 years before he mastered Fuin to the proper level and was able to use Hiraishin. The proactive guy even came up with an improved version of the technique. It remained to figure out how to implement it. At the same time, a war began in the world. A war in which he would participate with his team. And a war in which he would lose almost his entire team. In Sweet Rin, and kind Obito. This undermined both him and the remaining member of his team, Kakashi, but Minato had a beloved wife and many friends. Hitaki had neither. It was Minato who contributed to the end of this war, having destroyed several thousand Iwagakure shinobi in a few seconds using the advanced technique of the Nadaime. With the help of this same technique, he was able to overtake one of the fastest shinobi, the son of the Sandaime Reikage, Yes, these Reikage have their own joke with names. Only when his dream came true, Minato realized the responsibility that was on his shoulders. He didn't protect his students, and he was entrusted with an entire village. Fortunately, he still has his now wife, Kushina, sensei, Jiraiya, student, Kakashi and many friends, the Fugaku family, Inoichi, Shikaku, Choza and Hiyashi. I'm going to be a mom, Dadbane. Kushina exclaimed happily, stunning her husband, who simply wanted to cook dinner. Ah, it turns out that I'll become a dad, Namikaze asked with eyes like saucers. I'm going to be a mom, Dadbane. She repeated, coming closer, almost squealing with joy. I'm going to be a dad, Minato said happily, coming close to his wife. We're going to have 2 boys. I'll be a mother twice, Dadbane. The first one has been born, Bawako announced, handing the baby to the nurse. He had red eyes, fair skin, and barely noticeable white hair that partially blended into the skin. Kushina, she shouted discontentedly. Don't relax. Hi, Uzumaki answered convulsively and continued to push. Born, Kushina whispered as Bawako swaddled the blue-eyed baby with dark skin, bright yellow hair that contrasted strongly with his skin, and 3 stripes on each cheek. I became a father. I have 2 sons, Minato said, wiping away a tear. You have strong children, Sarutobi nodded, bringing the child to the mother. What will you name him? Menma, the young mother said with a forced smile, but then perked up. Where's Naruto? They've already taken him away. Kakashi should take him to your house. Minato. Bawako slapped Namikaze's hands. Close the seal, then you'll be babysitting the children. 2 women with a baby headed for the exit of the room, but before the young parents had time to exchange a couple of absolutely happy phrases, the screams of women and the cry of a baby were heard. The dead bodies of Sarutobi and Taji. Nurse fell like a sack to the floor, and the child ended up in the hands of a stranger, whose face was hidden by a pale yellow mask with black flames. Menma, Kushina screamed in fright. Here is your house, Naruto, the last Hatake said, smiling at the child and showing him the building next to them. The kid turned to look, but it didn't interest him much, and he went back to his interrupted task of tugging at a silver lock of hair. The Jonin missed the chuckle and went into the house. Actually, I don't know what to do with you now, Kakashi smiled awkwardly. I'll take you to bed. Having expressed his thought, he decided to immediately implement it and stayed to guard the baby's sleep. Suddenly, a loud roar was heard, and the next second, the village was covered by an unbearable chi. Oh, shit, Kyuubi, the son of the White Fang said quietly, clenching his fists and rushing towards the window. It should be safe here. Kushina-san put up the barriers herself, he thought, turning to the child who had woken up from what was happening outside. I will protect you, Naruto. Suddenly, Minato appears in the middle of the room with a baby in his arms. He walks past Kakashi as if in oblivion and places Menma next to his older brother, adjusting the blanket on his newborn sons. You'll be safe here, he said quietly, stroking the two small heads. Naruto, Menma, wait a little bit. I'll save your mother and bring her to you, and then I'll save the whole village, I promise you'll be proud of me. Minato-sensei, the last Hatake exclaimed. What happened? There was no answer. Yondaime disappeared, and less than a minute later he returned with Kushina in his arms. He placed her with her sons and watched as tears of happiness welled up in the eyes of his beloved woman. Happiness that everything was fine with her children. They were alive and well. This made him feel uneasy, and his fists clenched. Minato put on his Hokage cloak and headed for the exit. Konoha was attacked, Namikaze answered shortly. So many people believe in me. I can't lose. You are strong, Yellow Lightning, the man who called himself Madara said in a bored voice. You were able to hurt me, freed the Kyuubi from my control. All this was said in such a tone as if he subdued the Biju several times a day, and wounds like the ones he received meant nothing to him. But the beast is destroying your village right now, and I still have time to get it back. This man will return for the Biju, which means I must protect the village and the family. But for this, the Kyuubi must be sealed, but only the Uzumaki can withstand this, and in extreme cases, the Senju. But Kushina will not withstand the second sealing, and Tsunade-san left the village. Naruto and Menma, but they are my sons, but I must also protect the village, because the village is a big family, and I, as Hokage, must take care of it. Then which of them? I can't leave the Jinchuriki in the family. What kind of Hokage am I if my child will be a threat to the village? Then Naruto, Menma is too similar to me and even if I give him to an orphanage, they can find out about our relationship. Naruto, who does he even look like? Maybe my parents look like this. Are Kushina's? No, all purebred Uzumaki have red hair, thought the Yondaime, trying to quickly make a decision. Forgive me, Naruto. It must be so, he said in a steely voice. I have to put up a barrier, Minato said, grimacing. I can still do it. Kushina smiled tiredly and wanted to release Kongo Fusa, but we'll take care of it, Minato, Kushina, Sarutobi said with a bitter smile on his face, nodding to his partner, Danzo. Surround the Kyuubi. Form a circle, Shimura commanded his Anbu, who began to form a barrier. Come on, Hiruzen. Hi, came the simultaneous response from more than 50 people. They simultaneously began to form seals and said, Karina Shoheki. Limiting barrier. Naruto woke up from the new noise and the loud roar of the Kyuubi and looked around with a dissatisfied face, as if trying to understand what was happening. It seems you've been awakened again, Minato said to the baby and turned to his wife. We'll seal the fox into him. What, Minato? We can't do this. We can't do otherwise. I found out that the person who attacked us wants to take the Kyuubi for himself. We can't leave the village without him, otherwise a war will start. You can hide it. Our village is huge, we can't keep track of everyone. That's why we have to seal the Kyuubi into Naruto. And you want to tell me that this man will come back and try to pull the beast out of my son and everything will happen again? Kushina trembled at the thought. This fox is ruining my whole life. Minato, I don't want it. This demon, Minato, he has been ruining my life since childhood. I won't be able to behave calmly with Naruto if you seal him in him. The woman began to panic. Namikaze understood that a couple of days would pass and she would calm down, regret her decision, and they would definitely have a big fight because he did not dissuade her. Now she was simply overwhelmed by a lot, but, of course, he did not tell her about it, because now everything was going as he planned. Therefore, not noticing that Hiruzen took Naruto, the man began to calm his wife. On the same day, Sandaime died due to the Shinigami summoning. Kyuubi was completely sealed in Naruto. Danzo offered to take him into his route in order to protect him from human hatred, but Minato assured him that the inhabitants would understand everything, although Shimura treated this with skepticism, but did not argue. Not his child, Tsunamikaze, as planned, gave his child to an orphanage. From this moment on, the difficult life of Naruto Uzumaki, the unknown son of the Yondaime Hokage, a demon hated by everyone, begins. Commentary on Part 1. Prologue. Congratulations, I learned hand seals. I don't know why I need this. Part 2. Invasion Mission. 4.5 years later. Eat what they give you. Say, thank you, that we feed you at all, the teacher shouted, looking at the plate of slightly sour rice, and then turned around and left, grumbling under her breath. They gave shelter to a demon, and why is Hokage-sama so concerned about his safety? Naruto turned to his plate and grimaced when the sour smell hit his nose. He was lost in thought, remembering how he lived before, Day X. That's what he called the day after which everyone suddenly began to hate him. At first, only the teachers with the cooks and nannies, and after a few months, the children joined in. Before that, everyone had a positive attitude towards him. Well, so what? He didn't throw tantrums, he didn't distract the adults, he learned everything quickly. True, he got on everyone's nerves when, 3 months before his 4th birthday, he announced that he wanted to learn to read and write. Sighing, the teachers took care of him, preparing for a year of mega interesting classes, for them, at least. To their surprise, by the age of 4, his training was over, and a few days later they learned that the cute child with a hedgehog of white hair and red eyes turned out to be a demon. From that moment on, his life was irrevocably ruined. What are you standing there for? Eat or get out of here, the nanny, Naruto's favorite before, approached the children. I didn't really want to linger here, he grimaced and snorted demonstratively, got up from the table and quickly retreated from the shelter. Tisk, I'll have to eat this noodles again. With that, the boy headed to the Ichiraku ramen stand, where he habitually emptied his pockets and scraped together a medium portion of noodles. Yes, he liked Chuki-san and Ayame-san, but he didn't like ramen. The noodles seemed too greasy to him, and Uzumaki would actually prefer healthier food, but there was one, but the orphanage wasn't going to feed him, and with the prices the stores offered him, he would rather die of hunger than save up for a couple of avocados. After quickly eating the portion, trying not to taste it, Naruto hurried to his next destination. The training ground. He had been visiting this place for half a year now. Mostly, he just did physical exercises. The training plan had been made a long time ago. It had formed in his head when he was about 3. The boy was bored. Everyone around him was either too old or too childish, interested only in what they could play today. For the first 3 months, Naruto was exclusively engaged in physical training. There was no point in trying to awaken chakra if it was too powerful for the body, no point in learning taijutsu if you were out of breath on the 5th move, and no point in learning shurikenjutsu if your arm got tired too quickly. But after this time, Uzumaki began to methodically try to awaken chakra. Almost every free half hour spent in the shelter, in his room, he spent exactly this. Usually, he managed to carve out an hour in the morning, after waking up, during nap time, which for some reason went instead of hour 3, but the son of Yellow Lightning did not complain. In the end, he spent this time usefully for himself, and an hour and a half before bed. Only 2 days were spent on this, and during nap time of hour 3, the chakra was awakened. Naruto was both happy and disappointed. He was happy to unlock his heart so quickly, because the book said that it usually takes a week or 2, but at the same time he came close to his goal several times, but there was a feeling that something was preventing him from achieving it completely. With the improvement of chakra control, that is, from the moment he was able to walk on water, the boy began to develop his sensory abilities. This, in fact, was a very useful skill for him. With its development, he began to consciously bypass the chakra centers he noticed, at least during holidays, when shinobi already lose control over emotions and actions and can easily beat him. Of course, before that, he had to spend about half a year to raise his sensory level. It turned out that he was quite talented in this. In addition to the fact that in order to use his sensory skills, he practically did not need to concentrate. After only a month and a half, when Naruto could monitor what was happening within a radius of 4 meters, he noticed that the chakra centers of people were different. A little later, he noticed the connection between a person's character and this chakra. For example, Anbu-ne usually had dim and cold chakra, while Anbu Hokage's chakra, although many times brighter, was still far from bright. But the chakra of the clown, he once noticed, as he mentally nicknamed the man with black shining hair in a bowl cut and surprisingly thick eyebrows. The strange stranger wore a green jumpsuit, orange leg warmers and an unbuttoned Konoha combat vest. But the Hittite was sewn into the red fabric that encircled his jumpsuit. This man's chakra glowed like a Christmas tree. On the other hand, the chakra of the equally strange old man was simply disgusting, so black that Naruto had never seen anyone darker, gloomy and simply icy. He had seen this old man only once, in the Hokage's office, when Uzumaki came for a manual. He looked like a rather fragile old man, and the cane he leaned on when walking only complemented this picture. He had black shaggy hair, and his right eye was hidden by bandages. There was some strange chakra under the bandage, which made the eldest son of the Hokage think that the old man was hiding a dojutsu. The chakra was light and warm, unlike the chakra of the owner of this eye. There was an X-shaped scar on his chin. He wore a white shirt with a black robe over it, from his feet to his right shoulder. The robe hid his right hand, which also hid chakra, but it was different. The hand itself emitted bright chakra, even brighter than the eye. It was warm and friendly. However, there were about 10 small sources of dark chakra in it. In the same way, Naruto was able to understand whether a person was lying to him or not. Every time a person lied, his chakra began to create rather specific vibrations, and considering how falsely the Hokage smiled at him, he could already automatically recognize a lie. By the way, now he had developed his sensory skills so much that he could easily control the area within approximately 250 meters. From that moment on into this day, Uzumaki only deals with physical training, sensory development and chakra control, which he had suspiciously much of, and something again prevents him from improving its control, which seemed strange to him. In addition, he had an incredible amount of chakra. Yes, he is an Uzumaki, but judging by the color of his hair, he is not even a purebred. A logical question came to mind: where from? The boy sometimes ironically joked under his breath about the Biju, which he read about in a book about his clan. It said that the red-haired devils had such mastery in Fuinjutsu that they could seal them, and that only the same Uzumaki or, in extreme cases, Senju could withstand the sealing of the Kyuubi. Knowing that the Biju can be sealed, that the Kyuubi is only sealed in the Uzumaki and Senju, his last name, noticing the complex seal on his stomach more than once and paying attention to how he is called, demon, devil spawn, and the like, he could not help but assume that he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, but he preferred to hope that this is not so, because according to the books, the Biju are clots of hatred that have no mind and are only capable of destruction. By the way, Naruto was not used to trusting everything at their word and could not fully agree with this, because, judging by the same book about the Biju, which he decided to read next, no one tried to talk to them, but immediately began to throw techniques at them with shouts. Oh no, look at what a huge creature, and there are many tails. Well, everyone except Ikibi needs to be killed immediately. Although no, we'll steal his chakra. Although, perhaps, only Naruto himself imagined it that way. All the chakra torture paid off with the boy's persistence, who recently wanted to become not just stronger, but also to fight back against those who decided to beat him up. Now Uzumaki has very good control over all this chakra. At a minimum, it is enough to confidently stand on water, on one hand. It is logical to assume that the greater the weight, the more chakra is required to support this weight on trees' water, and therefore, pressure can also affect the amount of chakra needed. For those who have not yet studied physics, for reference I say that the larger the area on which kilogram is pressed, the less pressure is applied to this area. Or, as Naruto once tried before losing his balance and hitting the water flat, but, by the way, not going under it, jumping on the water on the same hand. As for physical activity, now Uzumaki can't be beaten by civilians, because the little bastard still needs to be caught up with, and if he also uses chakra. And several of his peers won't be able to beat him, because his physical strength and agility are enough to deal with them even without the taijutsu style, which can't be said about the academy students, starting from the third, sometimes second, year, and especially about the genin. So, I should start learning shurikenjutsu, but first I need to get a throwing weapon. It would be nice to learn some style of taijutsu. But where to get it? Naruto thought to himself. I could try to sneak into the academy and get all this there, but who would let me in there? They would say that I am small. Disappointing thoughts flashed through his head. Well, damn, there is obviously some kind of transformation technique, but I also need to get it first. The world is cruel, he whined. Ho, and I will sneak into the academy, pretending that my older brother is studying there, then I will hide and I will be able to study everything there all night long. Let's begin. Naruto, however, was not going to cancel the training, so he spent an hour and a half on exercises as usual and a half-hour meditation, first on the right and then on the left hand, so that they would strain equally. But instead of the usual second approach, the boy went to Ichiraku to carry out his insidious plan to invade the academy. Ayame-san, Uzumaki called out of breath, rushing to the counter. I need your help. Naruto-kun, did something happen? Tsuki's daughter asked with a little fear and interest. After all, the boy was quite close to him and his father, and she wouldn't want anything to happen to him. Can you come out with me? I'll explain everything to you. Fine. Opening the kitchen door, the girl said something to Tsuki and went outside. They instead walked to Senju Park, which Naruto really liked and was not far from their shop. Having reached a free bench near the fountain, they sat down. Ayame gave him a long look, hinting that it was time to explain why she was kidnapped from her workplace, while Uzumaki, completely ignoring the hints of his interlocutor, was thinking about how best to voice his request. Ayame-san, I need a little help. Do you have any, wig or hair dye? Naruto looked hopefully into the dumbfounded eyes of the girl, who was in complete shock. This was not the question she expected from such an excited boy. She never thought that this child would do something like dye his hair, and besides, he always liked his hair. Of course I have one, but why do you need it? Well, how can I explain it to you? Uzumaki said thoughtfully. I want to go to the academy and read something there, but they'll kick me out of there. After the explanation, Ayame sighed in relief. That was more like her little friend. She would have definitely had a stroke if she heard something like, I decided to change my image, or, I want my friend to like me. She would not have been mentally prepared for that, and the answer she got was more like this boy. Although, she really wanted him to say something that would cause her to have a stroke, because in her opinion, he had too few friends, or to be more precise, none at all. Okay, I'll give you what you ask for. I have a black toner. It's almost like dye, only it doesn't last as long. On my hair, it washed out after a month. Ah, Naruto scratched the back of his head awkwardly and blushed a little. Could you help me dye my hair? Certainly. Well, look how handsome he is, Ayame said with a smile, placing a mirror in front of her young friend. The boy turned to the reflective surface, a 4-year-old child with fairly light skin and, unfortunately, no longer a white hedgehog on his head. Now his hair was black. Naruto didn't even try to style it. Why? The hair doesn't bother him, and he likes it that way. Thin stripes of the same white eyebrows and eyes with bright red irises that stand out against the general background. Yeah, now I look like an Uchiha, Naruto snorted. All I'm missing is a tomo on my eyes. Oh, come on, this clan is full of handsome guys. As if I care, the boy folded his arms across his chest and looked at the girl with displeasure. Ayame couldn't help but laugh, even though she knew it would offend the red-eyed girl, but it was too much for her. Naruto, with his height, just slightly over 1 meter 10, with such a dissatisfied face. She barely refrained from shouting, kawaii, only because he reacted to it even worse than to laughter. Well, Ayame-san, Uzumaki cursed with displeasure. Well, go ahead and laugh, I have to go. Leaving his face emotionless, the boy left the apartment, not forgetting to frown occasionally, turning to her. At least he doesn't look like himself, the eldest son of Yellow Lightning reassured himself mentally and barely suppressed a sigh, remembering that he would have to be a brunette for another month, but he was already approaching the guard, so now it didn't matter. Where are you going, kid? The old guard asked with a kind smile. Cursing under his breath, because if it weren't for the disguise, he would have been kicked out, but here he was, so good-natured, and besides, he had to bite his tongue and not say something like, look at yourself, old man. Naruto turned around and, as if he hadn't expected such a reaction from the guard, babbled. Sorry, my Ni-san is sick and mom asked me to pass this on to his classmates. Okay, come in. The first stage is over, Uzumaki thought. All that's left is to find the library and hide there. The warehouse can wait. Naruto carefully walked past the children he met, trying to look natural and dodge the students flying at him. He didn't want to walk through the entire academy, and it was suspicious. He turned his head around to try and find something that would help him solve this problem, but he found nothing. There aren't even any calm children anywhere. Except for the Uchiha standing there, thought the eldest son of Yellow Lightning, looking at the two boys. The first of them was a boy of about 10 years old, thin build, with dark brown, almost black eyes and long black hair, gathered in a low ponytail. On his face were long stripes, running from the inner corners of his eyes to the middle of his cheeks, which looked extremely unusual. He was wearing a black shirt with the Uchiha symbol depicted on the back, gray pants and black sandals. On his right thigh hung a pouch. Despite his age, he already had a blue Konoha Hittite. The second one looked slightly older. He had the same dark eyes and dark blonde tousled hair. The guy had a fairly wide nose and pronounced eyelashes, which made him look rather cute. Naruto mentally snorted at that thought. He was dressed in the standard Uchiha clan attire, which was a black shirt with a high collar. He carried a tanto on his back, secured by a brown harness that went over his left shoulder. On his legs, he wore shorts. He also wore a dark blue Konoha Hittite. So how are you doing as a chunin, Itachi? Asked the elder Uchiha. Shisui, you've been asking me this question for a month now, the younger one responded in a calm voice. So you've never answered me anything worthwhile. The first one was loudly indignant. Naruto raised an eyebrow in surprise, watching his emotions. Well, maybe we'll go to the dango stand and you'll tell me everything there. He asked with a sly smile. Itachi's face became interested. Why the hell should I tell you about my chunin days if you're a chunin yourself, Shisui? The younger one asked with a twitching eye, to which the named one burst out laughing, sending Naruto into the astral plane. Strange Uchiha. Very strange Uchiha. You never know what to expect from them, Uzumaki muttered quietly under his breath. Okay, Itachi, why are we here? The elder asked, turning to his friend. My Otudo wants to start training. I need to get a couple of books for him. You know, something simple to start with. With different sets of physical exercises, maybe a history of the world or a more detailed history of Hai no Kuni. Okay then, they're both pretty weird, especially that Shisui. He's some kind of broken Uchiha, and tell me he believes in Hai no Ishi. Will of Fire. Well, at least I can follow them and find out where the library is, Naruto thought and carefully walked towards the Uchiha so they wouldn't notice the surveillance. Part 3. Useful Knowledge. So what kind of spy games are you playing? Itachi asked. At that moment, Naruto was standing calmly by the bookshelf, away from the teachers and librarians, looking for a place where he could hide, when the Uchiha appeared behind him, up to both shoulders. In my opinion, it was you who jumped out at me, although I was calmly standing and choosing books, Naruto calmly retorted, turning to the Uchiha. Weren't you the one who followed us here? What makes you think that? I think if I was following you, you would have noticed it and caught me right away, Uzumaki replied, grinning to himself but not changing his expression. He outplayed you, Itachi, Shisui laughed. So what are you doing here? I'm setting up explosive seals, Naruto answered, glaring at the questioner with displeasure, and turned back to the shelf. After spending a few minutes in silence, he continued. So are you going to stand behind me, Uchiha? Calm down, we're not going to kill you, the younger one answered calmly. What are you planning? Having found a book on the standard taijutsu studied at the academy and opened it to the contents, Minato's eldest son turned to his interlocutors, sending them a long look. This irritates me even more. What are you doing here? You're not a student yet. What are you doing here? You are not students anymore. And you have found fault. Now I will think that you are pedophile rapists, leafing through the book to the page with a description of all the necessary kata. What a language, Shisui chuckled cheerfully. Not complaining. So are you going to go about your business? I thought you needed to go to your brother. Naruto grinned triumphantly and looked at Itachi, who rolled his eyes upon seeing this. Okay, but if we see you here again, we'll take you out, the younger Uchiha said seriously and walked towards the exit, hearing a loud snort behind him. I had to get to the bottom of this, Naruto thought, turning to the next shelf and picking up the second book he had noticed earlier in the section on shurikenjutsu. Standing in the middle of the room with two books in his hands, he thought about whether he should take more books or that was enough. On the one hand, the books weren't very thick. On the other hand, he still needed to have time to read and understand them, and it was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Although it was still a long time until dark, Uzumaki decided and went to the shelf with books on chakra. The boy carefully looked at the books that stood there. For the most part, many were useless to him. This could be read in books from a regular library. Naruto decided to act by trial and error and took 2 books from the shelf. There was nothing interesting in the first one. But, judging by the content, the second one should contain basic techniques, so he had to take it. Turning around, the boy looked around. There was no one extra nearby, as well as places to hide. Looking around the room again, hoping that it would change and a hatch would appear that he could climb through, Minato's eldest son came across the book in his hand. Basic techniques. Red eyes narrowed with interest. Looking around again for a threat, the boy opened page 394 and looked at the first technique. Bunshin no Jutsu. A clone, but not a shadow one, but a regular, illusory one. A ninjutsu that allows one to create an intangible copy of one's own body, without any solidity. Since the clone itself has no attack power, it can only be used to confuse the enemy, while the technique is mainly used in combination with other ninjutsu. The clones disperse upon contact with anything. These clones can be easily distinguished by people who possess dojutsu. A person with normal eyes can also distinguish a clone from the original, since the clones have no shadow and, when moving, do not affect the environment around them. Required seals: Hitsuji, sheep seal Mi, snake seal Tora, tiger seal. Naruto glanced at the description of the technique. It didn't seem all that interesting to him, but it was still useful if he wanted to buy himself a few seconds while preparing an attack or, on the contrary, a retreat. Unfortunately, it wouldn't help him at all now, so he began to look for the next technique with his eyes. It was Kawarimi no Jutsu. Body replacement technique. A technique where the user changes their body with that of an animal or an object that takes the user's form using henna no jutsu. Typically, this object is a block of wood. This creates a short-term illusion that the enemy believes that the attack was successful. Based on this, the user can either suddenly attack the enemy or flee the battlefield. Required seals: Tora, I. Pig seal Ushi. Bull seal Inu. Dog seal Mi. Uzumaki thought about it. This technique was more interesting. And definitely more useful. You can come up with a lot of things with it. Starting with the fact that you can replace yourself with an enemy, and if you have several opponents, they will start attacking their ally. Or in a battle with an Izuka, you can replace yourself with a Ninken. By the way, apparently, nothing will work if you do not learn this certain henge. Not knowing both techniques did not stop him from coming up with different options for counterattack in such a situation. First of all, it came to mind that the log you are replacing yourself with can be covered with explosive seals or, if you know Fuinjutsu, then with summoning seals, from which kunai or shuriken will fly out. The next technique was, precisely henna no jutsu. Transformation technique. This jutsu is used to transform the user into another person, but they can also transform into an animal, a plant, or even an inanimate object such as a weapon. Because of this, the technique has multiple uses. The transformation of skilled shinobi makes them indistinguishable from the original, while the transformation of an inexperienced user contains obvious inconsistencies. It is considered one of the most difficult E-rank techniques, as it requires constant release of chakra while concentrating on the form. Required seals: Inu, I, Hitsuji. But this was what he needed right now and, given his chakra control, Naruto should be able to use it. He folded the 3 necessary seals as a test, letting the chakra flow through them, then presented them to Ayame and whispered, henna no jutsu. Judging by the fact that the height from which he looked at the world had changed, he was able to perform the technique. It remained to be seen how accurately. Uzumaki did not notice any mirrors, so he would have to examine himself, which was somewhat inconvenient, because it was impossible to notice whether he had done his head correctly. For example, examining the visible parts of his body, the boy nodded with satisfaction and dispelled the technique, shrinking by half a meter again. The problem was practically solved. All that was left was to figure out how to get onto the shelf and not fall to the floor as soon as he turned into a book. After all, he was not going to climb onto the shelf. At the very least, it would be a strange sight if someone accidentally entered this compartment. Although it's unlikely, considering that there aren't many people in the library anyway, and those who are there are reading something that's definitely not textbooks. After standing and thinking for a few minutes, Naruto realized that he had screwed up. How was he going to read the textbooks if he was going to transform into a book? Mentally slamming his head against something hard, he continued thinking. A new and clearly better thought came almost immediately. Uzumaki had used henna no jutsu again. Now he looked like a tall boy of 10 years old. The new student of the academy was a little overweight, with sparse long curly chestnut-colored hair, large eyes, the look of which he did not even try to make a little less indifferent. A narrow round face was decorated with a wide nose and thick lips. You can't call him handsome, although in this village it was unlikely that there was anyone except Ayame or Tsuki who would say a kind word to him. Ignoring the not very pleasant thought, Naruto looked at the books. They would not let him go with them just like that. Squinting slightly, he grinned at the idea that came to his mind, which he immediately began to implement into reality. Chakra began to flow into the first book, turning it into a small pencil case. The second became an empty bento, and the third, a notebook. Having put all the school supplies in a previously prepared backpack, Uzumaki headed for the exit of the library. It was unusual in a body of such a size, but this did not reduce the need to continue the action, so he calmly went to the nearest office in which he did not feel people. Such a one turned out to be literally in the neighboring wing. Coming closer, Naruto saw that today he was definitely incredibly lucky. Otherwise, it was impossible to explain why the classroom was open. No, of course it was possible, because next to the office there was a bucket of water and a mop. However, the janitor himself was not in sight, so calmly slipping into the classroom and closing the door so that the janitor decided that the office was already closed, he sat down on the teacher's desk, taking the first book in his hand, which he had already started reading. Topics about what chakra is and how to develop it, about the mythical Rakudo Sennin who created chakra or what types of chakra existed were of no interest to him, as was the structure of the SCCH. Chakra circulation system. All of this could be learned from the public library, unlike various techniques. Of course, basic E-rank techniques. In addition to those read earlier, several necessary skills were also briefly described there. Kibakufuda, Kase, explosive seal, activation, a ninjutsu that allows a shinobi to activate a kibakufuda. Explosive seal. Seals required. Mi. Kakurimino no Jutsu, invisibility cloak technique, is a technique that allows the user to use a cloak or piece of cloth to blend into an object, thereby disappearing from the sight of others. Nawanuke no Jutsu, rope release technique, is a basic technique that allows a ninja to free themselves from bonds or ropes. After reading everything Naruto considered necessary, he began practicing the techniques. While practicing, he mentally thanked himself for training his chakra control so diligently, because the techniques were obtained quite quickly, so in a couple of hours he brought them to perfection. Thank all Kami that there was a mirror in the office, allowing him to hone Henge no Jutsu, various chalks and rags on which he practiced Kawarimi no Jutsu. Although he is not sure whether he will be able to use the last technique in battle, for this he needs experience, but where to get it is another question. Putting the book he had read on the desk, Naruto picked up the next one, about taijutsu. The book was not very long. There was only a brief description of the style itself, several dozen kata, pages with explanations of movements and advice. Having glanced over the pictures and text, Naruto did not find anything difficult, but the problem was still the same lack of experience. If he had already studied, there would be sparring with classmates, but in his case this would not work. Having decided to immediately read the last book, he began to study the theory of shurikenjutsu and carefully examine the pictures showing how to properly hold kunai, shurikens or senbons. Having memorized the position of the hand and its movement, Uzumaki returned to the taijutsu kata and began to train them. When the sun went down, Naruto decided to start acting. After stretching his muscles a bit so that they wouldn't be so clogged up later, putting his books in his backpack, he left the office, starting to use his sensory abilities. Not finding anyone in the school, he started going down to the first floor. There Uzumaki had noticed two chakra centers near the door during the day. He assumed that they were guarding something. At least, that would be logical, considering that iron is not a toy for children. And that's what I'm saying, right? Naruto thought, continuing to quietly move towards the stairs. Having reached the right door, taking the key from the guard along the way, Uzumaki went into the warehouse. Quickly finding the right shelf, he collected about 40 kunai and shuriken in a backpack, carefully placing them on the bottom so as not to spoil the books. Going further, he was surprised to find rows of tanto. Deciding that such a chance should not be missed, because even such a not very durable one would cost him at least 24 of his monthly allowances. Having put the treasure in a backpack, he thought that it was worth checking the library for a textbook on kenjutsu, although he was not sure that he had seen something like that. Having gone upstairs, Naruto confirmed the theory. He would have to learn to control the tanto in a different way. He was not very upset, because he needed to go to one more place in the academy. The archive. There should be data on current students or recent graduates. He did not find anyone particularly interesting. Unless it was his recent acquaintance Uchiha Itachi, who had already graduated from the academy. Uchiha Itachi. 10 years old. Genin. Character. Cold, intellectual, selfless with loved ones. Likes. Cabbage, onigiri with seaweed, Uchiha Izumi, lover, Sharingan, Kaden Jutsu, Uchiha Sasuke, younger brother confectionery, especially dango. Dislikes. Steak. Abilities on a 5-point scale, at the time of graduation from the academy ninjutsu, 5. Taijutsu, 4.5 genjutsu, 5 intelligence, 5 strength, 3.5 speed, 5 chakra, 2.5 hand seals, 5. He's a genius, Naruto thought with a mental chuckle. He has great potential. After walking around the archive for another 20 minutes, he didn't find anyone interesting, so, after checking that everything was in place, he headed towards the shelter, which he quickly reached, and then climbed into a previously opened window along the wall. He lived alone in the room. He had few things in it. There was an old bed, a wardrobe and a table with a chair. To this wealth, he added a mirror, many books, several sets of clothes in black, gray, white and blue colors. Although there were exceptions, for example, bedding in light blue, light green and pale yellow. But despite this variety, most often he wore a black mesh t-shirt, pants of the same color and sandals, and a blue shirt with sleeves up to the elbow, a high collar, near the throat it came apart, exposing the neck, collarbones and part of the chest. Naruto sat down on the bed, not wanting to sleep at all. He didn't like moments like these. He didn't like not even the fact that he couldn't fall asleep, but moments like these. When you sit alone and just think. You eat yourself and your soul. And you feel loneliness like never before. Uzumaki bit his lip until it bled, to distract himself with the pain and the taste of metal. It didn't help much. At moments like these, he unwittingly imagined his life if he had parents. But they were probably dead, otherwise he wouldn't be an Uzumaki. Otherwise, none of his parents would be Uzumaki. They wouldn't betray the family, would they? The boy quickly wiped away a tear that had unexpectedly rolled down. It was unlikely that any of his few acquaintances would assume that he cried on such unlucky nights. He was different during the day. Cold, almost emotionless. A person who could always support and clearly not the one who needed support. Quickly wiping away his tears, Naruto took off his pajamas and put on pants and a mesh tank top, jumped out of the window and ran to the nearest training ground. When he reached his destination, he began doing his standard set of exercises. Over and over again, until he fell to the ground exhausted. Part 4. Interesting acquaintances. Today is October 11th. Naruto is currently walking towards the Hokage Tower. He turned 5 yesterday. He congratulated himself on his birthday with a new set of kunai and shuriken from the academy and a few hours of soul-searching while being beaten up by several chunin. Memory. Naruto walked from the Ichiraku ramen stand towards the orphanage. Tsuki and Ayame had given him a free ramen and some coupons for a similar promotion as a birthday present. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening, so he tried to walk carefully and constantly used his sensory abilities to avoid running into anyone who would put him in danger, of which there were many. Uzumaki stopped abruptly and glanced to the right. What the hell? He asked quietly into the void. Just now the chakra of 4, most likely chunin, was calmly walking in the opposite direction, and now they started running towards him, and their chakra was dancing and glowing like a Christmas tree. Naruto sped up and ran lightly towards the shelter, hoping that the shinobi were running to another place. Only disappointment awaited him, because they were running right to the place where he himself had recently been. How the hell did they know? Minato's eldest son thought frantically as he quickly ran behind a trash can and hid. They couldn't sense me. Thanks to my control, I'm a master at hiding my chakra. Peering out from behind the cover, he saw the 4 of them where he had just walked. Suddenly, an Anbu wearing a white mask marked with a bluish triangle appeared next to them. Uzumaki's eyebrow rose in a silent question. What the hell is going on here? Continuing to watch, he noticed that the Anbu was pointing to the place that served as his hideout. What's going on here? Why did Anbu reveal my location to them? And whose Anbu is this anyway? Naruto asked himself until he saw the 4 running towards him again. Spitting on everything, he abruptly ran, trying to hide. There was little chance. Firstly, they were clearly stronger than him. It was not for nothing that the white-haired one was a censor. He clearly understood that he could not cope. He could leave an illusory clone, which could perhaps distract them, but was there any point in being distracted by this if it was unlikely to increase the chances of salvation and, in addition, would reveal his abilities, which he did not want at all. Quickly running around the corner, Uzumaki saw one of those chunin. Mentally cursing, he began to look around, but did not find anything worthwhile. An attempt to run past chunin was unsuccessful. He suddenly appeared in front of him and sent him to his partners, who met him with a fist in the back, which sent him on a not very long flight to the ground. Naruto miraculously saved his nose from such an unpleasant collision. It's time to pay for our sins, one of them chuckled, taking a kunai out of his holster, which the next second pierced his shoulder right through. When I say shoulder, I don't mean the part of the body between the neck and the arm, but what is actually called the shoulder, that is, the part of the body from the shoulder to the elbow. The white-haired boy screamed loudly. He expected pain, but he didn't think it would be so strong. The Chunin's faces wore nasty grins as they came closer and started kicking him. The boy covered his head with his hand, protecting it from the painful attacks of the legs, and diligently remained silent, only occasionally screaming from particularly strong blows and suspicious crunches. After a few hours, the four apparently got bored of kicking him, so they grabbed the little demon by the scruff of the neck and forcefully sent him into the garbage bags. Uzumaki lay there, not even trying to get up. What was the point of trying if 7 broken bones would prevent him from doing so anyway, so he went into the saving darkness. Naruto doesn't know how long he spent unconscious, but now, opening his eyes and looking around, he found a tunnel. Deciding that he needed to find a way out anyway, he went forward. He doesn't know how many times he came across a dead end. There was not a single door, not a single hatch or anything like that that could lead to an exit. But after, probably, half an hour, he still found an exit into some huge hall. Minato's eldest son had long felt an incredible amount of dark, evil chakra from here. There was so much of it that using sensory technology was already giving him a slight headache. Entering the hall, he saw a huge gate, tightly locked with a seal. Huge red eyes with a vertical pupil and a mouth distorted by a grin soon appeared behind them, and a huge amount of red chakra was floating around. "Come closer, boy," it said. "Yeah." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "I got going. I haven't even approached some incomprehensible crap yet. And sealed crap at that. TCH. You've ruined the whole atmosphere," the creature growled. "You could have easily gone into my stomach." "Of course, I already have an idea, but maybe you could introduce yourself. For example, my name is Uzumaki Naruto." "I already know your name, brat. I'm usually called Kyuubi no Yoko. So I am a Jinchuriki after all," the white-haired man muttered. "That's right. Hey, brat, if you want to take revenge on them, all you need to do is remove the seal." "Just, do I look like a moron? I still want to live. Although I wouldn't mind killing all those who despise and hate me because of you. Then remove most of the seal, and I will give you strength." "Are you kidding me? I was hoping for a more constructive dialogue. So what did you want to talk about?" "Well, I don't know. You said that they call you Kyuubi no Yoko. So, you call yourself something else. Maybe you have a name." "Yes, but why should I tell you?" "Well, I've said my piece. Moreover, since you're sealed in me, we'll have to contact each other, and calling you Kyuubi just because you have 9 tails is kind of stupid. Almost since my birth I've been called Kyuubi, and you're the first one who decided that naming us by the number of tails is not reasonable," the fox chuckled. "And why did you decide that? We're just mindless clots of hatred that are only capable of destruction. So they characterize us based on what they see. So what? Maybe you should introduce yourself after all." I can't trust you. You don't look like the image they describe in books. And how do they describe me? Just like you just said, Kyuubi no Yoko. By the way, it literally means, 9-tailed fox of misfortune, or Baketsun. Fox monster possesses the Kaden and Futon elements. You are the strongest of the 9 Biju. A mindless monster that should be kept under control and used for your own purposes. Did they write it exactly like that? Naruto looked at the fox. He looked at him, tiredly closing his eyes. He didn't look like a crazy killer at all, rather like a creature embittered towards people. A rational creature, which is not unimportant, which also has emotions. Although absolutely everyone believes that Biju have only an insatiable thirst for blood. Approximately, Uzumaki nodded, but I don't think so. You don't look like they describe you. And what do I look like? Well, besides the fact that you look incredibly strong and powerful, you look tired and more angry than crazy, Naruto answered honestly. The fox only snorted. I ruined your life, you should hate me. The one who ruined my life was the one who sealed you into me and left me alone, not caring that people are brainless idiots. So what can I call you? Okay, little one, my name is Kurama. The fox introduced himself majestically. The eldest son of Minato nodded briefly. Don't tell anyone about it. And get out of here. I patched up your bones, I'll do the rest myself. Thank you. Naruto nodded gratefully, disappearing. Naruto opened his eyes and groaned painfully, feeling pain all over his body. Leaning on the wall, he was able to get up and went towards the shelter. He climbed up the wall to his room, and then plopped down on the bed and instantly fell asleep. End of memory. Walking along the road and carefully ignoring the disdainful glances, Uzumaki glanced at the residents with a little interest. He was wondering why he was called. Of course, he wasn't planning on going out today, at least because his whole body was still sore and covered in bruises. Naruto, of course, knew that all of this would heal, and there wouldn't be a single scratch on his body thanks to the influence of Kurama and his own regeneration. In addition, the muscles torn by broken bones were still healing. Therefore, today Naruto was dressed in a black turtleneck with long sleeves and a high collar, pants of the same color and sandals. He wrapped his shins in bandages. Approaching the door, he knocked. "Come in," came a voice from behind the door. "Hello, Hokage-sama," Naruto greeted coldly. "Hello. I wanted to tell you that you are now being given your own apartment and your allowance is increasing. Everything you need is here." "Okay," the white-haired man nodded briefly. "Is that all?" Minato looked at his son a little nervously, a little surprised by how cold he had become. It made his heart ache. It wasn't that he felt much guilt for leaving his son alone, but it was still his child, so yes, somewhere in the back of his mind everything was screaming that he should beg for forgiveness, but it was so deep in his mind that it was almost inaudible, so he felt much more guilt towards Kushina. He couldn't help but hear her crying at night, almost every other week. He couldn't help but notice how she would sometimes go off and watch her child for a few hours, even though he was abandoned. And he couldn't help but feel how her heart ached painfully when she noticed how everyone was looking at her son. She loved him. She loved him very much. So yes, he felt guilty towards her, because he literally took advantage of her weakness. Namikaze was about to answer when the door swung open without a knock and Kushina flew in, not even noticing Naruto, which is why she almost ran into him, but he, without turning around, stepped aside, avoiding the collision. "Minato," she began to speak, when she was interrupted. Ahem, Hokage-sama, can I go?" "Oh, and you're here, Naruto-kun," Kushina said, throwing a menacing glance at her husband. "You're from my clan, too, aren't you?" "Yes, Kushina-san." "Oh, come on, let's do without the suffixes," she said softly, stroking the child's head. Naruto was unaccustomed to this and felt embarrassed by her actions. He wanted to throw her hand off. He had never been particularly tactile, and here was a strange woman, even if she was from his clan. Kushina, noticing a slight blush, decided to continue the attack with maternal care. She came closer and squatted down in front of him. "Oh, come on, we're relatives," she said with a sweet smile before hugging him tightly. Oh, little Uzumaki, who hadn't expected this, couldn't contain his emotions and grimaced painfully, accompanying himself with the same groan. "What's wrong with you?" The woman recoiled in fear. She definitely didn't want to hurt her son. "Naruto. Everything's fine," he replied, biting his lip. "Tell me or I'll find out everything myself," the woman said menacingly, but it didn't make the desired impression. The boy folded his arms across his chest and looked at her with piercing red eyes. "This won't do," she insisted. She rose to her feet, and her hair was divided into 9 parts. Kurama's residual chakra, Naruto thought. The woman in the meantime released one chain. Uzumaki had to admit that it looked dangerous, so he looked at her husband with pity, receiving an awkward smile. At that moment, the woman suddenly twisted him with the chain, and Naruto looked at her in shock. "If you don't want to tell me, I'll find out myself." The chain grabbed his legs, and Kushina pulled his turtleneck off and gasped in horror. Minato's eyes widened. "Minato, you said that the Uzumaki are guarded by your Anbu." "I didn't lie. Several people were assigned to him." Minato tried to defend himself, frantically searching the papers for the names of those he had sent to guard his son. "I don't see it." He was beaten. After that, she remembered that her son was still hanging from her chain, which she immediately dispelled and caught the boy. "I'll heal you, and you'll tell me everything, okay?" Naruto bit his lip. He looked very displeased, and on his face there was a very noticeable struggle between the desire to part with pain and pride. "This will hurt for a long time." "Okay," the younger Uzumaki answered reluctantly, and Kushina began the treatment. Her heart bled as she looked at his small body, completely covered in bruises and cuts. Her hands, covered in soft green chakra, moved over his skin with gentle movements. Tactile contact was not necessary during treatment, but for 5 years now she had wanted to simply touch her son, simply talk to him or cook him breakfast. She sincerely believed that she had deprived herself of this. There was not a single day when she did not reproach herself for this. "So what happened, Naruto-kun?" "Please just call me Naruto. I find Naruto-kun annoying." The boy shuddered, and he finally began to speak. "Yesterday I was walking home in the evening. 4 Chunin found me, or rather they came to the place where I was a few minutes ago. Then an Anbu appeared next to them. He had a blue triangle on his mask. I didn't hear what he said to them, but he pointed to the place where I was. I tried to run away, but they caught up with me. That's it. A heavy key appeared in the office. Kushina looked at Minato with an equally heavy gaze, which clearly said, "Wait a little, and I will kill you." Namikaze trembled slightly, but quickly brought his mind back to order. He remembered who had such a mask as the one his eldest son described. Bull, dog, Yondaime called and two Anbu appeared in the office. The first one's eyes widened when he saw little Naruto being treated by the Hokage's wife. This Uzumaki was looking at him as if she was ready to gut him at that very second. Dog, escort Bull to the interrogation department. Let them find out what he did last night, he ordered. Hi, said the Anbu with white hair like Minato's eldest son, abruptly twisted his partner and disappeared. Naruto, if something happens, please tell me, Kushina asked. The white-haired man nodded, not that he was really going to complain to her, but she clearly wouldn't leave him alone until he agreed. Part 5. Hatred. Kurama, Naruto called, entering the subconscious, which had undergone significant changes since the first appearance of its owner, and a lot of time had passed. Already half a year. Now it looks like a dense deciduous forest, and all the chakra is merged into a fast-running river flowing nearby. Do you think my body is ready to use your tailless cloak? The fox, pretending to be asleep, opened his left eye and carefully examined his vessel. I think so, but once the first tail comes out, you will no longer be in full control of yourself. More precisely, you will practically not understand what you are doing. You can try using such a cover and practice controlling the shape of the chakra. At the same time, you will improve your control. Thank you. By the way, I wanted to ask. You were sealed in 2 Uzumaki, right? Let's say so. So, purely theoretically, you should understand Fuinjutsu. Of course, Kurama growled. Try not to become a master of this craft if your Jinchuriki are obsessed with it. Fine, I'll teach you some seals and barriers. Okay, then I think it's worth learning to make seals with one hand. With my control, it's possible. I'll continue to develop sensorics, taijutsu, and shurikenjutsu. Maybe I'll find a few more techniques. I think you should learn Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique, and Toden Jutsu, Transparent Escape Technique. I'll help you with that. I will be very grateful. Okay, little one, get back to training, the fox said, yawning. Naruto nodded and disappeared into space. He found himself on one of the distant training grounds of Konoha, thinking that he would need to ask his tailed friend to show him what kind of one-handed seals existed. After all, they were different from the usual ones, although perhaps this could be found in the archives. Closing his eyes, Uzumaki concentrated. When he began to use his sensorics to the maximum, there was no way without it. After all, the territory of the entire village was not small, and right now, he felt all the creatures that possessed chakra in this area. Making sure that there was no one nearby, Naruto began to slowly draw Kurama's chakra. As soon as a cover of bubbling red chakra formed around him, he stopped. He felt how this chakra pressed on his consciousness, but it was still not enough to affect him even a little. Naruto decided to follow the fox's advice and tried to create a paw from chakra. It didn't work quickly, although good chakra control helped control the form, but the Biju's chakra is much heavier than the usual one. It is much more difficult to control. Uzumaki had just folded the concentration seal when he felt someone moving towards him. He quickly absorbed Kurama's chakra and jumped onto a tree, hiding the chakra. A few minutes later, the Uchiha, already familiar to him, landed on the training ground. Hey, Itachi, you felt this chakra too, right? Kyuubi chakra, the named one nodded. We sense you, come out. Naruto grimaced. Kurama said he was pretty skilled at hiding his chakra, and now he was discovered by several Uchiha, but there was nothing he could do, so he jumped off the branch, glaring at the boys. So what do you need? Uzumaki asked, folding his arms across his chest. Do you feel this way about everyone or just the Uchiha? Shisui asked, pouting. The white-haired man's thin eyebrow twitched. I treat your clan almost the same as all the others. Maybe a little more cautiously. Not without reason, mind you. Judging a clan by a few people is stupid, Itachi said, frowning slightly. Do I do that? It's enough for me to know how your dojutsu is awakened to be a little more careful, Naruto replied, looking at the younger Uchiha with displeasure. They didn't know what to answer him. Okay, you know our names, but we don't know yours. Uzumaki Naruto. Uzumaki. Shisui was surprised. But your hair. I am an orphan. I don't know who my parents are. I thought Kushina-san was sending all her clansmen to your quarter. She recently brought a new girl, Kimiko, I think. And you liked her, huh, Itachi? Shisui asked with a sly grin, causing the younger to blush a little. She's exactly your age, don't let her slip away. I'm glad that your personal life, Itachi, is going well, but what do you want from me? We sensed the Kyuubi's chakra. It was weak, but it was impossible to miss. We thought the fox had decided to capture you. As you can see, I am alive and well. Maybe we should train together? Shisui asked, looking with interest at the little Uzumaki, who began to look at him suspiciously. There are no evil intentions, he said, raising his hands. After consulting with Kurama, he nodded, sat down under a tree and began to wait for the Uchiha to warm up. Itachi suggested practicing shurikenjutsu and showed his signature trick. How do you do that? Naruto asked with interest. First, you should just learn to throw iron, Shisui said, shaking his head. The white-haired man clicked his tongue in displeasure and, without turning around, threw the kunai right at the target. You, the elder repeated, looking at the child as if he were the eighth wonder of the world. I just threw a kunai. Okay, I'll explain to you, Itachi nodded, coming closer. Okay, thank you for the training, Uzumaki thanked sincerely. And you too, Shisui said, exchanging glances with his friend. I think we could sometimes have such training sessions together. Maybe, the younger one answered evasively. I have to go, bye. After saying goodbye, everyone headed to their own homes. Uchiha to his clan quarter, and Naruto to his apartment on the outskirts of the village. Walking along the streets of the village, the white-haired one constantly encountered disdainful glances. Halfway there, it already enraged him quite a bit, so he began to talk to the fox, hoping that it would help. Yo, Kurama, when I get home, can you show me the basics of fuinjutsu? No problem, he calmly agreed, feeling the emotional state of the host. During this time, they had become very close. Despite all the nicknames he called his Jinchuriki. The little albino like the Biju, he became something like a small, stupid brother for him. Because of this, he doubly disliked the way the villagers treated his vessel. After all, from some point of view, it was his fault. If he had killed Madara, then he would not have been sealed in Mito, and therefore in Kushina, which means that no one would have sealed him in Naruto either. Thank you, Uzumaki nodded, smiling weakly, calming down little by little. But only until the moment when, in reality, a plastic lemonade can flew at him with a cry, take that, demon. How they got on my nerves. I hate them all. He exploded. Just as he wanted to run to his apartment to calmly smash his fists against the wall until they bled, he was grabbed by the neck, cutting off his access to oxygen, and, in the literal sense of the word, carried into the gateway. Madam is right, just one can won't be enough for everything we've suffered because of you, the shinobi said, grimacing, and spat on the pale face, slamming him sharply into the ground. Unfortunately for Naruto, he was completely sober, which meant he had no chance of escaping. Uzumaki rolled over onto his stomach and tried to get up, but a foot immediately flew at him, slamming into his ribs with force, throwing him into the wall. From such a meeting, with a hard surface, all the air flew out of his lungs. The white-haired one tried to reach for the kunai, but he didn't have time. The hand that was reaching for the pouch was pierced by the kunai. The albino bit through his lip, trying not to make a sound. If they were heard, even more people might come, but their intentions were unclear. The words, I hate, and, I will destroy them all. Them and their damn village, repeated in his head. While Naruto was trying to cope with the pain, the shinobi came closer, kicking his victim's head in the chin, like a soccer ball. The upper part of the body flew back, but not far, because there was support in the form of a hand held by a kunai in the ground. In the absence of the ability to fly back, the body began to twist, the blow was too strong. The hand began to turn around the kunai, causing unbearable pain. Naruto could not stand it and screamed, but almost immediately fell unconscious from the pain shock. He appeared in the subconscious, even here his hand was giving off pain, although not so strong. I think physical pain should not affect the subconscious, only psychological or psychosomatic trauma. In this case, Naruto's brain still perceives pain too vividly, so he feels echoes. Kurama, the Jinchuriki called softly. The fox looked at him with pity and guilt. The boy looked completely broken and devastated. Come here, Biju called. The boy obediently came up and Kyuubi wrapped him in his tails, laying him down near his muzzle. I hate them, the boy sobbed, finally losing the strength to hold back his emotions, feeling the fox's warmth. He was still a child. He was not even 6 years old, but he no longer needed to be an adult to cope with a huge number of problems. I will take revenge on them all. I will never forgive them. Everyone will feel what I feel every day. I will destroy this damn village. He screamed with his last strength, finally bursting into tears. Naruto, Kurama drew attention to himself. I understand your pain. For the last 100 years, everyone has tried to somehow control me, use my power, beat me only because I was subjugated by several Uchiha spawn. And they hated me even longer. I also began to hate people, but this does not improve the situation. The fact that I killed several freaks only created even more unfortunate people, and it did not make it any easier for me. Do you understand what I mean? If you take revenge on them, it will only get worse for you, especially since there are good people even in this village. Remember your idols. This Senju couple would not want you to destroy their brainchild, despite the fact that the people in it have become many times worse. Moreover, you are not forced to love them. You love the village, you can protect the village itself, and not individual residents. Thank you, Kurama, Naruto said, quietly sobbing. By the way, well, can I call you brother? Well, older brother, he asked sheepishly. The fox grinned condescendingly. I don't mind, little one. Thank you. By the way, there shouldn't be any pain here. Why does my hand still hurt, and my eyes are burning? The pain in your hand is reproduced by your brain as the last thing it successfully processed, but the eyes. Honestly, I don't know, the fox said, turning the Jinchuriki to face him. Try driving chakra through the eye channel. Naruto nodded and began to do as he was told, but soon he felt like his eyes were taking her in. His face began to stretch and he stopped swirling his chakra. Hey, Ni-san, is it normal for the eyes to absorb chakra? That's weird. You didn't have any dojutsu, try channeling chakra to them, the fox advised, and Naruto began channeling chakra until the fox's muzzle began to stretch out. What the hell? What's happened? Look at the reflection. Uzumaki jumped off the tails, approached the river and was dumbfounded. A tomo appeared on his, as always, red iris. His eyes began to widen in shock. He was Uzumaki, so what the hell did he have this lousy tomo in his eyes? Kurama ni, the white-haired man whispered convulsively. What the hell? He asked, looking at the fox with frightened eyes. How should I know? Answering your unspoken question, you must have few Uchiha genes. After all, their genes are strong. Only the Senju genes are, in your case, the Uzumaki genes can beat them. I think they are equal to each other, since your hair is neither black nor red, but white. Well, you will learn a few tricks and will use the Uchiha's main weapon against them, the fox chuckled maliciously. It's easy for you, it wasn't you who turned out to be part Uchiha, the albino groaned resignedly and hit his head on the tree. Commentary on Part 5, Hatred. An Easter egg just for you, Kimiko-chan. By the way, guys, I recently found an author. If you like gens with interesting plots, then visit him. It's just a shame when there are few readers of high-quality works, and the opposite is true for less high-quality ones. Part 6. Unexpected Meetings. Commentary to Part 6. Unexpected Meetings. There were no parts for a long time. I forge, partly my laziness is to blame for this, partly it is because school teachers are trying hard to kill me. I hope this time the part will come out faster. The sun was just rising above the horizon. A white-haired boy with eyes reddened from strain painstakingly drew kanji. When the heavenly body touched his eyes, he shuddered and looked up at the window, watching the awakening village. For one short second, the corners of his mouth twitched in a smile. No matter what, he loved the village. He would like to believe in Hai no Ishi, the will of fire, but he knew for sure that this village did not consider him family. But Naruto respected its creator, just like his brother. Shodai Hokage seemed to him the embodiment of strength, love and kindness, while Nadaime was strength, responsibility and determination. Kurama ni, he attracted the attention of his adopted brother. Do you think I can already control the third tail? Well, you've become much stronger, both in chakra control and physically. I think that's enough. It shouldn't be too difficult for you to control my chakra like this, since you've already learned how to control it. The amount won't matter much. In fact, it's a huge success. The fox decided to praise him a little. You're not even 7. Thank you, and about the chakra, I'll try. And finish with Fuinjutsu. You learn seals quite quickly. You learned the entire base. In these 6 months that remain until your 7th birthday, we will learn the barriers of the same assignments, but now you need to sleep. In the last week, you have only gone to bed 3 times. But I wanted to practice making one-handed seals. I said sleep. Kurama shouted. Come on, or tomorrow I won't explain Kenjutsu Kata to you. TCH, Naruto clicked his tongue in displeasure, but obediently went to the bed. As soon as his head touched the pillow, the boy fell asleep like a baby. He woke up when the moon was shining in the sky. The white-haired man froze. Had he really slept for almost a day? It wasn't that he was in a hurry, but he had wasted too much time. That's called not wasting time on sleep, but spending time with benefit for your health, stupid little brother, the fox drawled discontentedly. Yes, good morning to you too. After about half an hour, he was already running around one of the remote training grounds. Naruto hadn't wasted his time in these 1.5 years. His fuinjutsu had reached considerable heights, but all the seals he had learned were auxiliary. Like hiding chakra, sealing chakra into a seal, and the like, unless, of course, you count explosive seals. He was confident in the cover with 2 tails. His chakra control was incredibly high. Uzumaki skillfully folded seals with one hand. If he wanted, which he didn't have, he could become a good medic, but his wounds healed quickly thanks to Kurama and his genes. If things were really serious, he could unseal some Sen chakra. He couldn't control it, but he noticed that it greatly increased his regeneration. Taijutsu and shurikenjutsu were at their best. For his age, maybe, just maybe, he could defeat a chunin in these disciplines one-on-one, but Naruto has no battle experience, so it is unlikely that he will win. Where there were no problems at all, it was sensorics. His chakra network could cover the whole of Konoha without straining. Half a year ago, Uzumaki began learning kenjutsu. Kurama also taught him the promised techniques, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and Toten Jutsu. Having finished his warm-up, Naruto began releasing Kurama's chakra. The cloak. 1 tail, 2 tails, 3 tails. He took a deep breath and exhaled, trying to get used to the new volume of chakra. The chakra's attempts to dominate his mind seemed pathetic and did not interfere at all, so he began practicing controlling this chakra, but since the white-haired one knew how to do this, all that was left was to get used to the volume, which happened after an hour and a half. Then Naruto continued his standard training. It was already getting dark, and his stomach was loudly reminding him that if he didn't finally feed it, it would eat itself. The boy began to remember if he had any fish left at home that he had caught. He had recently realized that there were some pretty tasty creatures swimming in the rivers. Even though Uzumaki didn't really know how to cook, at most he could pickle or boil it, he liked the result much more than the same ramen. But it was already late, and catching and cooking fish required time, which he didn't have, since Kurama, apparently, had decided to start monitoring his stupid little brother's sleep schedule. Hello, Tsuki-san, Ayame-san, Naruto said automatically and only then noticed that he was already sitting in Ichiraku's shop, and when he noticed who was sitting next to him, he barely suppressed a doomed groan. Sitting next to him were Namikaze Minato, Uzumaki Kushina and Namikaze Menma. I'll have 1 medium portion, please. Okay, we'll do it now, Tsuki answered with a smile and, leaving his daughter with the visitors, went into the kitchen. Naruto-kun, you haven't visited us for a long time, haven't you missed us? Ayame asked with a sweet smile. There was no reason, and now I'm out of food at home, I won't have time to get some, so I decided to stop by, Naruto answered her, shrugging his shoulders. But the shops should still be open, Kushina said in confusion, cutting into the conversation. The white-haired man only snorted in displeasure. Hey, at the very least you could have gone into the clan quarter. I don't need handouts, Uzumaki answered, gritting his teeth. Oh, are you really an Uzumaki like my mother? Menma asked loudly with a bright smile. Naruto grimaced in surprise, but you don't have red hair. So what next? But mom has. I'm not your mother, I'm not even her son like you, Naruto snorted irritably, raising an eyebrow as he watched Minato and Kushina flinch, but they only shook their heads, saying that everything was fine. By the way, I'm Namikaze Menma. I know, nodded Minato's eldest son and began to eat ramen. The Uzumaki Namikaze family sat and thought about how to continue the conversation. Their eldest son turned out to be rather distrustful and uncommunicative, however, it was their fault. But Menma, not noticing the atmosphere, tried to get his brother to talk. Naruto Ni-chan, come on. The younger Namikaze began a new song, but was interrupted. Don't call me that, I don't like it, just like the kun suffix, he added, glancing at Ayame. Come on, Naru-chan, the girl waved him off with a cheerful smile, and everyone watched as her interlocutor's eye twitched. Ayame-san, I will take revenge on you, and my revenge will be cruel, Uzumaki said, narrowing his eyes. I will sneak into your house at night and pour a pack of flour on your head. Naruto, she exclaimed indignantly, but then she remembered, They won't sell it to you. I'm willing to pay extra for this, the boy grinned. Why won't they sell it? Minato blinked, his son turned his gaze to him and looked at him as if he were the last idiot, although why how? I don't even know, Naruto said with undisguised sarcasm. Maybe because the whole village thinks I'm a demon. Minato shuddered and looked down, feeling Kushina's droop. If they were with him, everything would be different. If they were with him, he would be happier. But what has been done cannot be changed, but they can try to change the future, of course, they will do it later. When he becomes Chunin and, according to the laws of the village, officially becomes an adult. So you like ramen too? Menma decided to lighten the mood, noticing the oppressive silence. Not really. It's too greasy for my taste, Naruto answered shortly, continuing to eat his dinner. Thank you, Ayame-san, Tsuki-san, he bowed slightly, turned towards his home, and only then added. Goodbye. The Yondaime Hokage family headed home in a very depressed mood. Menma was hanging around his parents and didn't understand what was going on. To-chan, Ka-chan, what happened? He asked excitedly. It's all right, son, he said with a forced smile and patted the little blonde on the head. Menma looked at him suspiciously, clearly suspecting that he was trying to deceive him, so he decided to find out for himself. However, Namikaze hadn't figured out how yet. Tisk, Hokage, is he really that stupid or is he just pretending? Uzumaki muttered irritably as he entered his apartment. You just guessed. Kurama chuckled sleepily and yawned. He's just a little short of Shodai's idiocy. The Hokage are too useless, Naruto said suddenly seriously. At least Shodai managed to brainwash the Uchiha, albeit temporarily, and created a village. The Sandaime didn't do shit, the Yondaime either. Mostly the Nadaime did something, he said slowly. I'll leave the village and protect it from the shadows. Then I'll have to come up with something to always know everything about the village, he said thoughtfully. It would be nice if I could immediately receive only the necessary information. Using people is unreliable, maybe a listening seal and... That's right, shadow clones will help. They will receive information from specific seals and disperse if they learn something important. All that's left is to figure out how to connect them. I'll do it today. Tomorrow, Kurama interrupted him sternly. In the morning, before training. Naruto snorted irritably, but said nothing against it and went to bed. Waking up with the sunrise, Uzumaki opened his eyes with difficulty and went to the bathroom, quickly washing his face with cold water to wake up faster. Finally opening his red eyes. Meaning the irises, not the reddened whites. He went to the table and began to think about how to combine the seal he needed and the technique, but first he needed to make a shadow clone seal. Several hours were spent just to roughly figure out what this seal should look like, and the remaining time until 11 in the morning was spent on unsuccessful attempts to bring the seal to life. Looking out the window and seeing that the sun was already high, the boy remembered that there was no food at all in his house, which he needed to fix, so he went fishing, wearing a mesh t-shirt, on top of which was a dark blue shirt belted with a white belt, pants of the same color as the shirt, and shinobi sandals. By the river, Naruto saw an old man with long gray hair tied in a ponytail. The man was constantly squinting, but his dark eyes could be seen. He was dressed in a torn brown sleeveless vest, under which he wore mesh armor. On his feet, he wore gray pants and sandals. Next to him, on a fire, there was a huge pot with mushrooms, a huge fish crossing the entire pot, and various herbs. The broth was boiling loudly, and the delicious smell spread throughout the area. Uzumaki decided not to focus on this and just walk past, although his hungry stomach was itching to talk to the man. As soon as he passed behind the seated man, he turned and opened his mouth to speak, but froze with a shocked expression on his face and even opened his eyes wide. Nadaime-sama, he barely managed to say. Naruto looked down at him, his left eyebrow raised and arched. The man continued to look at him like he was the eighth wonder of the world, which was starting to piss him off. The white-haired man's lips curled in displeasure, and his arms were folded across his chest. Maybe you'll tell me why you're staring at me like I'm a ghost. Naruto asked irritably when he realized that they had been standing like that for about 9 minutes. He still needed to take care of the provisions. The old man jerked at the question, returning from his thoughts to reality. Sorry, kid, the man said with a smile, narrowing his eyes again, while Uzumaki's eye twitched at the name he was given. You look a lot like Tobirama-sama. Only there are no stripes on your face, he continued good-naturedly. I'll take that as a compliment, the white-haired man said discontentedly, mentally regretting the wasted time and moved on. Wait, would you like to join me for lunch? The gray-haired man suggested. Naruto turned to him, narrowing his eyes suspiciously, but not closing them like the man did. No, he said confidently. No matter how appetizing the dish looked, who knows what the old man mixed in there. Be brave, young man, keep the old man company, I'm not going to poison him, the man said while Uzumaki was monitoring his chakra. He was telling the truth. I don't even know your name. As am I yours. My name is Kosuke, he introduced himself. Naruto. Uzumaki nodded briefly and looked around, looking for a place to settle down without getting his clothes dirty. Finding a stone a few meters from the fire, he placed it next to it and sat down. Kosuke handed him a bowl of freshly prepared stew. Despite the fact that the white-haired man did not see the characteristic lie of chakra fluctuations, he still carefully examined the food and, not at all embarrassed by the man, sniffed it. Nodding to himself once more, he muttered, "Eat it Akamasa," and began to eat. You said that I look like Nadime-sama, he said, swallowing a piece of fish. Did you know him? Yes. Old age has its advantages. I personally knew and worked with many strong and famous shinobi. I met Togurama-sama, Hiruzen-sama, and Hitaki Sakumo-san. And if from the living, then I was able to work with Jiraiya-sama, Danzo-sama and Yondaime-sama, said Kosuke. You really are similar to him. Not only in appearance, when you became irritated by my long pause, you reacted the same way as Nadime-sama once did. That's an interesting coincidence, Minato's eldest son said, smiling at the corners of his lips. Tell me about it, he asked. Part 7. Dyer be killed. Commentary on Part 7. Dyer be killed. By the way, for those who don't know yet is my group. There I will post everything related to my works. Maybe some announcements and spoilers. You can discuss my works and all that. Tomorrow marks 7 years since the demon's attack. We're having a small feast, would you like to join us? Naruto heard as he walked through the market with two Uchiha, Itachi and Shisui. I don't understand these people, Uzumaki said discontentedly. Don't pay attention, the elder one waved it off, to which the white-haired one snorted. Think about something good, it's your birthday tomorrow. I still don't celebrate it. This needs to be fixed. Itachi, how do you put up with him? Minato's eldest son asked wearily. I'm surprised myself, the Uchiha heir replied, glancing at his clansman. Shisui pouted. Okay, here's the training ground. What are you going to do, Naruto? I need at least some experience. If any of you would spar with me in taijutsu, kenjutsu and shurikenjutsu, I would be glad. Okay, let me, Itachi nodded. Uzumaki nodded and took the stance of the recently learned style. Yo, Kurama ni, I need fighting styles. Where can I find them? The Jinchuriki asked the Biju sealed within him. In this village, something can be stored either in people's heads or in the Hokage's scroll. I've never seen Kushina or Mito go anywhere for techniques, but they wrote down their Fuinjutsu in this scroll, and Minato also wrote down Hiraishin no Jutsu. Flying Thunder God technique, in it. So the Hokage's scroll, I understand you, the white-haired man nodded and looked at his watch, we can go get it tonight. I'll have to use Fuinjutsu, Naruto thought discontentedly, looking at the scroll. There's too much in it, I won't have time to write down all the techniques. Fuinjutsu. Sukuroru Shintai Bunshin. Fuinjutsu. Bodily division of the scroll. Fuinjutsu technique. Like cloning, but not shadow, illusory or elemental, but bodily, that is, the scroll has a real body. He whispered quietly, folding several seals. 3 more such scrolls appeared in front of him. Uzumaki immediately returned the original to its place, sealed the new scrolls in a spatial seal on his left forearm, checked the nearby area for chakra, and jumped out the window, not forgetting to close it. Kurama ni, do you think it's worth it to have training today? The white-haired man asked, a little tensely. It's up to you. Training is good, but if you get beaten, it will be bad. On the other hand, you will increase your pain threshold, after all, they are not killing you, they are afraid. And if they do kill you, they will throw you off the Valley of Completion, and you will swim to Madara, or to Madara and Hashirama, or to Madara, Hashirama and Tobarama. Sorry, I couldn't resist. The fox answered sleepily. Okay, for now I'll just go and finally hang up my seals. These are the very seals that Jinchuriki made a month ago, and all this time they were lying in the seal on his forearm. The principle is based on those same shadow clones in the wiretapping seal. The clone in the seal receives information, every evening it is updated. That is, all memory is erased, not transmitted to the original and so on until the double hears something important, in which case it dissipates, and a new one appears in its place, due to the senchakra that gradually accumulates in the seal. In fact, the most difficult thing was to remake the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu technique into a similar seal. The seals were in the most important places, in Naruto's opinion. That is, in addition to the truly important places, there were also parks, alleys, shops, training grounds, and so on. But most of the seals were in the hospital, in the intelligence department, although it was difficult to get there because of the damn Yamanaka censors, in the police. There were 3 more places where he wanted to put his seals: the headquarters of Ne. Root headquarters, the Hokage's residence, and the Konoha prison. Right now, he was entering the residence with several clones under Henge no Jutsu. While the duplicates were heading to the archives and meeting rooms, the original was heading to the Yondaime. A seal was also planned in his office, and since he was currently alone in the office, not counting the Anbu, this was the best time. Knocking on the door, he began to wait for an answer. "Come in," Minato's voice sounded. "Oh, Naruto, do you need something?" "Yes, Hokage-sama," Uzumaki nodded, remembering what he was going to ask. "I wanted to clarify something with you." "What exactly?" "You are Kushina-san's husband?" the white-haired man asks hesitantly. "Well, yes. I would like to ask you where the Uzumaki quarter is. It is unlikely that any of the villagers would answer my question. Even if they knew." "Oh, I can send Anbu with you." "No, it's not worth it, just explain." "Well, okay." Namikaze puts his hand on the table, and with his other hand he beckons his eldest son, who comes up to him, standing next to him. The Yondaime's right hand falls on his shoulder, causing Uzumaki to shudder, and his left one points to a block on the map of Konohagakure no Sato. "Right here. You need to go towards the onsen, then you go further and that's it." "Thank you." Naruto nodded, checking the seal he had attached to the table to make sure it was working. "Why do you need it?" "I am an Uzumaki after all, so I would like to know if I can study Fuinjutsu and if so, when I can start." "Okay. Good luck to you, Naruto, bye. I'll go to prison after I leave Konoha, but the headquarters of Ne, Naruto thinks. "Hey, kid," Kurama's voice called in his head, "you can give me control, I'll make a prisoner seal and strengthen it with my chakra, then we can catch one of Ne's Anbu and make him do the seals for you." "You're the best, Ne-san." "Is everything ready now?" Naruto whispered tiredly, leaning his back against the wall in the gateway. Today he spent a lot of chakra to activate all the seals, especially the prisoner seal, as well as the subjugation of this person. After all, there are no weaklings in Anbu, so he had to spend a lot of chakra on this. Uzumaki was about to head towards home, when a large group entered the same alley. Judging by their vests, they were Chunin. The boy wanted to run along the wall of the house, taking advantage of the fact that they were most likely drunk and would not have time to react, although he had doubts about this, because their chakra reserves were much higher than Chunin's. In addition, it was too calm for angry drunks. The white-haired man jumped onto the wall, but 2 of them immediately grabbed him by the arms and returned him to his place, immediately hitting him in the solar plexus. "Kurama, what to do?" the Jinchuriki cried out in his subconscious. "There are too many of them. You have to wait for the moment when they relax and run away. You can't handle them alone. They will kill me. I won't let you die, don't hope." The Chunins, who Naruto himself suspected were Anbu Ne, continued to beat him. Uzumaki himself waited for the moment and thought about why they needed him. To vent their anger? Unlikely. To complete a mission? Probably. Their group of beaters was clearly growing, because now real genin and civilians had gotten involved. Now the boy was thinking only about the fact that he would not escape so easily today. From the blow that flew into his ribs and, judging by the crunch, broke several of them, he coughed up blood. "Ha! This demon looks like our Nadaime," one of the civilians chuckled. Especially if the blood wasn't all over his face, but only in stripes. "We can arrange it," Chunin purred, snatching a kunai from his pouch. "Come on, hold it." The man thrust the iron deep into the child's chin, so Naruto felt his bone, and then moved the kunai down to the end of the chin, but continued to move the kunai closer to the throat, but stopped in the middle of the lower jaw. Then he also painfully pierced the right cheek into the cheekbone and moved it to the corner of the lower jaw. The same was done on the left side of the face. "Well, now it's definitely a copy," one of them grinned maliciously. "But we won't tolerate this demon copying our Hokage, will we?" Another one said sweetly. There were murmurs of agreement. "Let's throw him off the cliff of the Naka no Kawa River." "I just don't get the joke when they go all the way to the Valley of Completion to throw him off." Just for a minute, The Valley of Completion is on the border of the Land of Fire and the Land of Sound. Just to get there you have to walk a fucking long time. I hope to drown myself there at least. The Ney fighters looked at each other and nodded in agreement, unanimously deciding that it would be easier to complete the assigned task, so soon the whole crowd was heading to the designated place. Approaching the river, Naruto began to concentrate Ku's chakra and fold the seals for Kawarimi no Jutsu with one hand. One of the Anbu took out a scroll and unsealed the body. Uzumaki looked at his double in surprise. There were differences, of course. The second one didn't have stripes on his face, and also, he was dead. The white-haired man still used the technique and switched places with the corpse. He had learned the techniques he studied well, so using Ku's chakra he was able to perform the substitution without the haze. Kurama ni, Naruto called out in a slightly frightened voice, can you protect me with chakra? Of course, but it won't protect you from everything, you should understand that yourself. And 1, and 2, and 3, several people simultaneously released the child and he flew down. Naruto felt a feeling he hadn't felt in a long time. He was scared. If there was a sharp ledge or a shallow place underneath him right now, he would most likely be a corpse. The crowd burst into joyful shouts when they saw the floating body, which began to be carried away by the current along with the red stain. This needs to be celebrated. One of them suggested, the others supported him and followed. Hey, guys, aren't you with us? Asked a rather tall genin, looking at the dozen chunin. No, one of them answered coldly, sealing something in a scroll. Let's go back. Minato, a gentle voice woke up the golden-haired man. Kushi, the blonde opened his eyes, good morning. Let's go, breakfast is on the table. The two went down to the dining room, waking up the younger son in the process. Within a few minutes, everyone was sitting, eating breakfast and talking, sometimes laughing. Minato-sensei, Kakashi appeared out of breath in the middle of the kitchen in a whirlwind of leaves. Naruto, he's gone missing, I've been all over Konoha. He's nowhere to be found. What? The Hokage jumped up. Find the falcon, the chinchilla. They were supposed to be watching him. Hi. Naruto, Kushina whispered with her eyes full of tears. Menma looked back and forth between the parents. Something was wrong with Naruto, for both of them to be so worried about him. He could tell that these two weren't going to tell him anything, although it was worth trying. Ka-chan, to-chan, who is this Naruto? You react so strangely to the news about him. Menma, you see, we can't tell you this yet. Then I'll find out everything myself. The younger Namikaze cried out, running out of the house. Kaharu-sama, Homura-sama, the mission is complete, the Anbu reported, placing the scroll on the table. Okay. Homura grinned nastily and opened the scroll. There was a dead child on the table. This is, what the hell? Part 8. Awakening. After landing painfully flat on the water, Naruto appeared in the subconscious. He didn't even open his eyes, completely preferring to get some rest after such a beating. Most likely, you will have some scars, because right now my primary task is to heal your bones. Before the fall, you already had several broken ribs, an arm in several places, a wrist, a knee, and a concussion, plus that idiot, drawing stripes on you like the Nadime, hit a vein on your chin, and if I don't do something about it right now, you'll just die from blood loss. And when you fell flat, you broke your spine, so you can choose which cuts I heal, because some will already heal, and I can only remove all the crap from there. Well, of course, I've never heard that scars decorate little bastards, but I'll calm myself with this, Naruto said, leaning back on the fox's fur, closing his eyes. I need to grow the biggest ones together. Grow them on my back, legs and left arm. Leave them on my right, they'll be a reminder of my beloved compatriots and why you can't trust people. Leave them on my face too. Even though they make me look like the Nadime, it's better this way than everyone seeing me as Konoha's Jinchuriki. At least they'll hunt me less, and I look like Tobirama-sama without them, so their absence won't save me. And leave a scar on my chest. Okay, Kurama answered laconically. Go on, get out of the subconscious, it's time to wake up. Okay, Naruto said, but despite the answer he didn't disappear and turned his frightened gaze to the Biju. Hey, Ku, I can't go out. Hell yeah, I get it. I think it has to do with the fact that you still have a chance of not surviving unless I fuse the rib that's digging into your lung right now, the fox replied calmly, while the red eyes looking at him widened. Don't worry, I've healed worse. Minato sat in his office and reread the document for the 13th time. He still couldn't concentrate on his work. His entire mind was consumed with worry about his eldest son. The unknown was driving him crazy. Yesterday was October 10th, he should have done something to protect him, but he did nothing, which is why he cursed himself. Namikaze believed that he was to blame for what happened to Naruto, although his fault for what happened yesterday was indirect. On the other hand, if he had left him in the family, none of this would have happened. Menma, who had decided to find out everything about Naruto, was also really stressing the man out. He knew his son for sure, and he could be perceptive and stubborn, so Minato would be lying if he said he wasn't afraid that his youngest son would find out who Naruto was to them and that he might hate them. Even though Menma was forgiving, the Yondaime couldn't predict how he would react when he found out what he had doomed his brother to. Minato-sensei, the voice of his only living student, broke him out of his thoughts. The falcon and the chinchilla said that they were replaced by a rat and a spider. They even showed me your order. My orders? Namikaze repeated, puzzled. He clearly remembered that he had not given any orders regarding Naruto. Show me. Kakashi handed him a paper with an order written in his handwriting to change the Anbu monitoring the Jinchuriki on 10 out of 10. Wait, Jinchuriki. In his orders, he always wrote Uzumaki Naruto. The man decided to check how he wrote in his other orders, so he opened the file on Uzumaki Naruto and flipped through all the documents about him. Everywhere it was, Uzumaki Naruto, he hadn't made a mistake. I didn't write that, the Hokage replied, handing the paper back to Hitaki. Take on this matter with your squad. I authorize any checks to be made. Hi, Kakashi said, taking a dog mask out of his pouch and disappearing into the shunshin. We were outplayed by some boy. Kaharu barked indignantly. That boy Minato will definitely find those who joined in the beating of the Jinchuriki and they will say that they killed him. We won't even be able to organize a full-scale hunt for him. If he survives at all, Homura corrected her. Judging by the report, he was beaten pretty badly. The fox won't be able to heal him, because the seal is completely closed. If that damn Minato had sent him to Root, he would have been trained to use the fox a long time ago, then the seal would have been slightly opened, thanks to the constant use of poisonous chakra. The old men looked at each other angrily, clenching their fists. They did not consider themselves guilty, the weapon was lost because of Minato's stubbornness. That's right. Minato, a frail-looking old man, burst into the Hokage's office without knocking, immediately throwing his cane at the Hokage. Yondaime moved to the sofa and now looked at the broken window with a little fear. A few more moments and this weapon of mass destruction would have definitely pierced his head. Danzo-sama, did something happen? Namikaze asked with a trembling voice. You still ask, bastard. The shinobi growled. My men and Hiruzen sacrificed their lives to seal the Kyuubi, and you not only managed to lose your own son, but also a Jinchuriki. Didn't I offer you to hide him in the root, huh? What are you? You're a moron. Have you learned anything at all? Danzo asked, trying to calm down. I sent Rose Squad, the Hokage, cowering from the man's ki, quietly answered. And that's it. Oh Kami, why do I need such idiots? Kagami, who did you leave me with? Our teammates are idiots, the Hokage is a moron, Shimura whispered hopelessly. Your son was beaten and thrown off Naka no Kawa. For some reason, it seems to me that Homura and Kaharu took part in this. Why the hell did you send them to me en route? They do whatever their heart desires. There is no order. He spat demonstratively and, having finally knocked down the door, left the office. Kushina-san, we haven't found anything yet. Menma heard Kakashi's sad voice, the woman sobbed, but he didn't hear anything else. Oh, Kakashi-ni, you're here too, greeted Namikaze, who was supposedly just coming down from the second floor. Can I see you? Hitaki nodded and went out into the street with the blonde. Ni-chan, what's wrong with Naruto? Minato's youngest son asked worriedly. So you already know everything. Seeing an affirmative nod, the guy sighed resignedly and answered. Judging by everything, your brother was beaten again, but we still haven't figured out what happened next. Okay, thank you, Kakashi, the child replied sadly. I'll go. His head was in a mess. What do you mean, your brother? What do you mean, beaten up again? What's going on here? His parents always talked about the value of family, slightly differently, but the gist was pretty much the same. Only Minato connected the whole conversation with Hai no Ishi, while Kushina talked about the Uzumaki principles. Could it be that Naruto was actually his brother? Of course, he was also an Uzumaki. He immediately remembered all the strange looks his parents had given Naruto in their depressed state after meeting him. Yes, this Uzumaki could really be his brother. But if he was his brother, then why was he beaten? Why did he live separately, and why didn't Menma himself know anything about him? Namikaze decided not to tell his parents anything about his new knowledge for now. Now he wondered when they would decide to confess to him, and he would be able to hear the full story. But for now it was not worth drawing too many conclusions. Maybe they had some reasons. Although what kind of reasons could there be to leave your own, damn it, child on the street? And yet he needed to calm down. "You'll live, monkey," Kurama growled tiredly, having pushed his Jinchuriki with his tails before doing so. "Ha! Thank you," Naruto muttered, opening his eyes and exiting the subconscious. The first thing Uzumaki realized when he found himself in the real world was that he didn't know where he was. The second was that his clothes were, firstly, soaking wet, and secondly, all covered in some kind of shit. Both facts pissed him off. While he was thinking about it, a wave of water covered him, forcing him to jump up abruptly and cough. And at the same moment, he realized that it was, in fact, incredibly cold here, especially in wet clothes. The white-haired man began to look around. There were many mountains around him, and if you look closely, not too far from here everything was covered in snow. About 5 kilometers. After what happened, his head didn't want to work. After massaging his temples and looking around again, the Jinchuriki finally realized where he was. Tetsu no Kuni, country of iron. Well, not so bad. Moreover, he was never afraid of the cold. On the contrary, snow and ice more than attracted him. Although it was worth noting that he treated water and rain in exactly the same way. Realizing that the water on his head had already turned into ice and that simply standing in such cold was not the best idea, Minato's eldest son began to undress. In his opinion, it was about zero outside. From the seal on his hand, pants, long gloves and black sandals appeared, a blue t-shirt, a dark blue short-sleeved shirt and a bandage that found its place on the elbow of his left arm. After warming up a bit, Naruto went towards the 3 largest mountains, otherwise known as the 3 Wolves. The capital is located there. After consulting with Kurama, he decided that it would be a good idea to learn kenjutsu from the samurai. 3 days later, Uzumaki reached his destination and was already approaching the gates of the village. Near them stood 4 samurai, who, unlike the 2 Konoha guards, were actually watching what was happening. As he approached, Naruto had already begun to think about what he would say. "Little one, where are you going?" "Hello," the white-haired man bowed slightly. "I would like to live here for a while and learn kenjutsu." "Tch, Yoshinori, take him to Mifune-sama," one of them ordered. Yoshinori nodded. "Follow me," he said and walked deeper into the city. "That's it, come in," the man said, leaving the office of the head of the samurai. "Hello," Naruto said, bowing slightly. "Hello, I was told that you want to learn kenjutsu." "That's right. Why? For what?" "I like this art. I studied independently for about half a year, so I can do something, but it's terribly little." "I understand. Are you a shinobi?" "It depends on what you mean. I don't belong to any village, but I also trained myself in some shinobi directions." Mifune nodded, satisfied with the answer. "Okay, you can study with us until you satisfy your desire to improve or achieve the desired result. You won't become a samurai, of course. You'll live in a dormitory at the temple. I hope it's clear that the temple is not religious. We don't have any special training grounds for shinobi, but I think the forest will do." "Thank you very much," Naruto nodded, taking the paper from the old man's hands. "Go see my deputy, he will understand everything." "Thanks again, goodbye." "Wow, Kurama, the clone has already dispersed. Information collection seals, can you imagine? Where do you think it came from?" The white-haired man said, sitting down in a meditation pose to sort out the information he had received. "Either from the root or from the Hokage's office. After all, the Jinchuriki has disappeared." "Okay, we'll find out now." Memories of a clone. "Kushi, did you want something?" Minato asked. "Yes, did you find out what happened to Naruto?" Uzumaki asked, watching his saddened face with horror. "Danzo said that he was beaten and thrown into Naka no Kawa," Namikaze said in a funeral voice. The red-haired girl recoiled. "Minato, where were your damn Anbu?" The woman screamed with tears in her eyes. "They allegedly received my order, and they were replaced by 2 Anbu-ne. Your damn Anbu killed my son." Kushina screamed, literally sobbing. Minato came up to her and hugged her, trying to calm her down. After a few minutes, he succeeded. "No, it's all our fault. If Naruto had lived with us, none of this would have happened. It's all us. We killed our own child." Naruto looked at Kurama with eyes full of horror. He did not see the memories and was afraid to assume that he could learn something like that. During all this time, he had become attached to this ice cube. It was not for nothing that he became his so-called Otudo. The fox barely restrained himself from recoiling when the Sharingan with 3 Tomo. I think I forgot to write that he developed his gadget to 3 Tomo thanks to training activated in his eyes, which quickly spun, changing the pattern. Closing square bracket dot. The Biju grabbed the boy with his tail and pulled him towards himself, trying to calm him down. This was all he needed. What happened? The fox began cautiously. They threw me out of the family. Hai no Ishi, the principals of Uzumaki, the boy sobbed, they just threw me out. Naruto, family is not those in whose veins the same blood flows, but those who will support you and help you. There is no point in you thinking much about them. They are nobody to you. They are the ones who need you now. You can easily live without them. Kurama tried to calm his vessel. Especially since you have a great, powerful, divine, beautiful, charming, strongest, all-crushing, wonderful and charming me. And also modest, the boy either laughed or sobbed. Hey, do you doubt my perfection, pathetic little human? The fox asked indignantly. Of course not, Naruto muttered, tucking one tail under himself and settling more comfortably on it. PFF'd. By the way, you awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, Kyuubi stated in a casual tone. What? The white-haired man jumped to the river and began to feed chakra into his eyes, but before he could even see anything, blood began to pour out of his eyes, and they themselves began to burn unbearably. Uzumaki bit his tongue until it bled, so as not to scream in pain, and pressed his palms to his eyes. Got it, he groaned, I won't even try for now. Commentary on Part 8, Awakening. The title is philosophical this time and can be interpreted in different ways. I came up with 3 options. Part 9, Tetsu no Kuni. Mifune-sama, I would like to transfer to another class, Naruto said. Why didn't you like this one? Too simple, Uzumaki answered laconically. I've studied the course of this class for the entire year, he explained his problem. I can give you textbooks for next year. Study them and come, said the head of the samurai, writing something down. Thank you, the white-haired man nodded. Can I go? Go. Naruto has been living in Tetsu no Kuni for 2 months now. He hasn't forgotten about training. It was much easier to train here. There are no Anbu watching you. No residents trying to beat you up, or even kill you. Now, in addition to Kenjutsu, Uzumaki decided to develop his own speed, chakra volume, and control. Volume increases, control worsens, therefore control too. He was never slow, especially if you use chakra, but there is room for improvement. With chakra volumes everything was the same. Now he was running to class. Luckily for him, no one in the temple wore this bulky armor. Uzumaki is late, asked the sensei. I'm here, Naruto said, stepping out of the line. The man chuckled contentedly. He liked this white-haired guy. He didn't come early, but he was never late, appearing as if from nowhere. He trained hard, despite the fact that he was clearly ahead of their class, although he lacked some of the basics. There was one more person training. He approved of such initiative. There will be sparring today, he said. With real weapons. Uzumaki, Takeuchi, you first. The white-haired boy looked at his opponent. He was his age, a little shorter, slender with a sparse hedgehog of red hair. His small eyes looked at him wildly, with delight. The boy was clearly pleased with his opponent. He had a round face, a snub nose and thin lips. The Jinchuriki approached the stand, chose a katana for himself and walked to the center of the hall. His opponent took the same weapon and approached him. They bowed to each other and parted. Let's begin, commanded the sensei. For a few seconds, the opponent stood, waiting. Takeuchi ran first, Uzumaki ran towards them, they clashed with katanas. Naruto pressed harder and pushed his opponent away, forcing him to stagger back and move the katana to the side to maintain balance. The white-haired man moved the sword down in an arc and jerked towards the red-haired man. He sharply raised the katana, deliberately intercepting the handle closer to the blade, so instead of ripping open his chest, Naruto only ruined his kimono. We broke up, the sensei said categorically. But sensei, we didn't hurt each other, Uzumaki objected. You yourself know that you would have wounded him if you hadn't grabbed the katana, the man said categorically. Tisk, the white-haired man clicked his tongue irritably and helped Takeuchi stand up. This is just awful. I didn't have time to do anything. What kind of warm-up was there if I finished in 4 seconds tops? Naruto was furious in his subconscious. Calm down, little brat, Kurama snapped at him. Ask your sensei to put you with someone else. You know yourself that your level is higher than your age group. Okay, Uzumaki agreed, having calmed down. Atsushi-sensei. After the lesson ended, Naruto ran up to the man who was about to leave. Atsushi-sensei, I have a request. What? The samurai asked with barely noticeable interest. I think you know that my level is higher than the rest of the group. I would like to ask you for individual lessons or at least sparring with someone from the older groups, Uzumaki explained. The man stood for a few minutes, thinking about the request. I'll think about what can be done and tell you before the next training. Come 15 minutes earlier. Hi. Mifune-sama, I'm back to see you again, Naruto said, entering the office. Anything else? The man asked. You see, since I'm not an adult yet and haven't received the ranks of shinobi or samurai, I can't make money. But that's what I do best. Could you assign me any tasks? I can describe my skills in more detail to make it easier for you. You just turned 7 recently. Why are you here alone? For Mifune, as for most of the inhabitants of Tetsu no Kuni, this was wild. Therefore, he still decided to ask him before answering. I grew up in an orphanage. Where are you from? Hai no Kuni. Konoha or a regular city? Konoha. Okay. The old man sighed tiredly, massaging his temples. Tell me what you can do. I'm not strong in ninjutsu yet. I think my taijutsu and kenjutsu won't help much on missions yet, although I can distract or completely occupy bandits or weak missing nin. My strength in sensorics can help much more. I can sense any chakra owner over a huge radius. I also know the basics of fuinjutsu. I can be useful in reconnaissance or other missions related to obtaining information. Your skills can be useful to us. I could put you with my people on the borders, but how will you be trained? Mifune asked, narrowing his eyes, smiling easily. Naruto chuckled contentedly and created a shadow clone without making seals. I understand you, he nodded, letting go of a chuckle. Then you will help us on the borders. So, for one shift of guarding a post, a team receives from 80 to 200,000 ryo, depending on the conditions and complexity. Usually there are 5 people in a group, so you will be the 6th. So, it depends on how much you want to earn and how much chakra you can afford to spend. I understand you. When can I start? Starting tonight, a person will come to you and explain everything in more detail. There, on the spot, you will decide how many posts you will cover. Hi, can I go? Mifune nodded. Naruto sat on the bed in his room at the temple, making one-handed seals with his left hand, and his right hand. Despite the fact that he had learned the seals themselves, he was still doing them quite slowly. 2 clones were sitting nearby, doing the same thing. Several more were practicing fuinjutsu, or to be more precise, they were practicing calligraphy, which was very important when writing seals. 4 more were reading copies of the Hokage's scroll. 1 clone for each, looking for interesting techniques. When there was a knock on the door, only the original was distracted, getting up from his usual place and opening the door. There stood a young guy in a gray kimono. Hello, is your name Naruto? Hello, yes, it's me. Then follow me, he asked. Naruto nodded, only turning to his clones for a couple of seconds. You know yourself that you continue to work and not to unwind. The doubles nodded, not distracted from their work. Let's go, Uzumaki called, leaving the room and watching the guy who, with eyes like saucers, looked at a dozen identical people. Yeah, let's go, the guy said, recovering from the shock, and headed to the small headquarters. I think I figured out how you'll be on several posts at once. How many posts can you support? How many are there in total? 19. Naruto began to think. If there really was an attack, he would not want to simply dispel the clone. Such experience would be very valuable. But creating too many clones would negatively affect his academic performance, even though his volume was large. Therefore, the clones, at a minimum, needed to be strengthened with Kurama's chakra. Uzumaki did not want to divide the chakra more than 4 ways. For now, he would be useless otherwise. After thinking for a while, he dispelled the clones studying at home, collecting all the chakra for himself, and created 3 clones. At that moment, they were already entering the headquarters building. The white-haired man entered the necessary office and, while the team captains were discussing something, he filled each clone with the Biju chakra. This volume would not be enough even for Yoko no Kuromo. Demon Fox Shroud without tails. Nodding to them, he began to think about what he learned from the clones that had been dispelled. The Shodai Hokage's scroll was mostly Mokutenjutsu and Senjutsu. Several Bunshinjutsu, division cloning techniques Fuinjutsu, which interested the clone, Kekkai Ninjutsu, barrier techniques, and genjutsu, which were still difficult for him. The Nadime's techniques were simpler in that they did not require a separate keke genkai, but were very difficult to perform. Jikuken ninjutsu, techniques between space and time kinjutsu, forbidden techniques, and sudenjutsu were found in his repertoire. Several genjutsu and kekai ninjutsu similar to his brother and bunshinjutsu, kage bunshin. Sandame did not have anything particularly interesting, like his two predecessors, but he had techniques of all elements, although, mainly, only kadenjutsu and dadenjutsu, a summoning technique that could give him a good advantage, but was too dangerous for now. His father's techniques were interesting. An improved version of Tobirama's Jikuken ninjutsu and his own developments based on this technique, ninjutsu with the highest level of kitai henka. Chakra shape, simply put, mastery of controlling the shape, movement, size, range, etc. Chakra, many complex fuinjutsu, again a summoning technique, but, in addition to this, many renki ninjutsu. Joint techniques, for example, with summoning, some senjutsu techniques. The clones rewrote many techniques, excluding the keke genkai and senjutsu techniques. Okay, Naruto, my name is Ichiro. I'm distributing people to all the posts. How many posts can you take? Asked a short young man. He looked a little thin, had sparse long wavy dark Russian hair, small eyes carefully examined him, not noticing his 3 copies behind him. There are 4 of us, Uzumaki answered briefly. Okay, you'll go with Michi, Mise, Temitsu, and Shin. After each name, one of the men standing here nodded, accepting the child into his squad. In any other country, instead of calm nods, there would have been outrage. Everywhere but here, all the samurai trusted Mifune implicitly. And since he was the one who sent the kid here, it meant it was necessary, and he would not be a burden, although they could not imagine how he could help them. Everyone decided to just keep quiet about it and find out either in practice or just ask later. Any questions? Ichiro asked when he noticed that everyone was lost in their own thoughts. The red eyes focused on him and the boy nodded. How often do you have to fight? The question was asked very calmly, so no one understood why he needed to know. Was he afraid or something else? Quite often, at least 1 post per shift, but bandits will attack. For some reason, everyone thinks that if we don't use chakra, like shinobi do, then we are weak. The guy snorted loudly, expressing his skepticism. Okay, are we leaving soon? In half an hour. Everyone get ready. Naruto stepped aside. He checked his FUNN seals. Everything was in place. Kunai, shuriken, and tanto. There was paper with ink, and ready-made seals, and if he had all of this, then his clones would have them too. He was ready, so while the 3 clones sat in the lotus position and began to meditate, Uzumaki created 15 more clones that went to his room to continue what he had interrupted by dispelling the clones and tried to learn several shuriken kage bunshin no jutsu. Shuriken shadow body division technique, and rasengan. Rasengan. It was much better to do it this way. Because if he had created 3 clones for the posts without dispelling the ones that were at home, they would have less chakra, which was undesirable, because their chakra does not replenish. But he will have enough time to replenish it in these half an hour. Let's go. Several teams approached him. All 4 clones stood up and went to their checkpoints. Commentary on Part 9. Tetsu no Kuni. I posted part of it, forgetting to uncheck the draft. Part 10. Night Watch. Commentary on Part 10. Night Watch. Yes, I'm still alive. I officially give you permission to throw slippers at me. I have several reasons. All of them partly contributed to the fact that some of them took a long time to come out. 1. Laziness. I study at a gymnasium where the programs are very difficult, so I often return home with the desire to die. 2. Related to the first, there was no desire to write anything. 3. We had a ton of huge essays, so just looking at any text made me feel bad. There were few ideas. 4. I played some games. 5. I was very ill. High temperature. Head, overcooked dumpling, bones aching, throat cutting, coughing like a micro explosion in the throat. And also a runny nose. It seems like there was something else, but I can't remember now. The night was quite dark and, unsurprisingly, cold. However, it wasn't like Naruto was freezing, so he was fully concentrating on his task. Sensorics, and it was also a good lesson in attentiveness. You could follow some animal, focusing on sounds. It wasn't boring, and if it became boring, he would start exchanging phrases with Kurama. He didn't need to concentrate especially. Even so, without trying, he was watching a huge territory. They stood idle for half the night. Samurai, dressed in bulky armor, talked, trying to brighten up the time and dispel drowsiness. Jinchuriki, leaning against a wall covered with frost and ice, watched the sensory network and listened to the sounds, out of interest tracking down several. Probably hairs, someone else, more massive, would create louder sounds. Suddenly, he felt 6 chakra centers. Naruto narrowed his eyes and concentrated. The area he was watching grew larger and clearer, allowing him to see everything in greater detail. Shinobi, not particularly strong, somewhere between a strong genin and a weak chunin, were running towards them. The chakra wasn't particularly pleasant. It would be more correct to say nasty. It fluctuated in a rather specific way, which clearly indicated that the group didn't just want to spend the night in the city. They were worried about something, or were agitated. Although there was a chance that they needed urgent medical help. Uzumaki frowned, squatting down and touching the ground with his right index finger. No, there was not a single one who had sudden changes in chakra. This often happens, because if a person, for example, is wounded, then at the site of his wound there is almost no chakra due to the fact that, firstly, it is absorbed by the body, subconsciously trying to tighten the wound, and secondly, at the site of the wound, small chakra channels would be torn, worsening the flow of chakra. In the case of poisoning, either only the first, or if the poison somehow affects the chakra, then it also makes it either accelerate at the site of damage, randomly rushing around the infected cells, or, on the contrary, practically stopping the chakra. Sorry to interrupt your conversation, but do you often have shinobi drop by? No, usually only new cannons, the closest one shrugged. Why? There are 6 shinobi 900 meters away from us. They are running towards us. They are not particularly strong, at the level of strong genin weak chunin. I don't think they want to tell us anything good. They will be here in 5 or 6 minutes. So that's how you'll help us, the Taicho chuckled. Forewarned is forearmed. You're quite a strong censor, he praised Uzumaki, but the Jinchuriki only nodded, not particularly impressed by the phrase. His mind was much more occupied with the upcoming attack on them. They didn't have to wait long. Soon the new cannon appeared on the horizon. There was a snow desert around, so there was nowhere to hide. They didn't even try. They stopped in front of Naruto and the samurai. One of them, apparently the main one, stepped forward and took out a scroll, fed chakra into it, and a man fell out. How about an equal exchange? He asked with a victorious grin. He was a man of about 30, of average height and build, and had a remarkable feature. He was completely bald. Isn't this Mikao? One of the samurai asked quietly. We must inform Mifune-sama about this, said the Taicho. I sent a clone, Naruto replied after 5 seconds. Good. We need to hold them off until they tell us the answer. Come in, a tired voice answered. It was almost 11 at night. Naruto flew into the office. Mifune-sama, the missing nin have arrived at the 5th post. They have a hostage. I believe his name is Mikao. Mikao. The leader began to leaf through the pages of one of the folders. At some point he raised his head and answered. This is a trap, this man is a traitor. Destroy everyone except Mikao. He must be interrogated. Hi, Naruto replied and disappeared. Taicho, Uzumaki called, barely moving his lips. Mifune-sama reported that Mikao is a traitor. We must destroy everyone except him, he must be interrogated. Okay, I'll take 2, the rest 1 each. And Naruto, we don't know what you can do. I hope you can at least hold him off. I can, Naruto nodded. After quickly examining the opponents externally and checking them with sensors, Uzumaki determined the weakest one. There is no point in being brave, he has no experience in battle. It would be stupid to die because of this or to set up someone from the team. The samurai team, together with Uzumaki, moved towards the missing nin. Is this country so poor that they send children to guard the borders? Minato's eldest son's opponent snorted mockingly. Naruto folded his arms across his chest, looking at him impassively. Snorting loudly, the missing nin pulled out a kunai and ran at the child. When there was only a meter left, 4 clones that he had created in advance appeared in front of Naruto and they used Toten Jutsu on themselves. They quickly pushed off and jumped on the enemy, knocking him onto his back. 2 held him by the shoulders, 2 more by the hips, the original jumped on his chest with a running start, judging by the sound and also breaking several of them, unsealed the kunai and quickly cut his throat. Looking around, Uzumaki saw that the others were still fighting. In fact, he hadn't really had a fight. Looking at the Taicho who was fighting with 2 at once, he decided to help him. Having grabbed the kunai more comfortably, the albino cast Toten Jutsu on himself and, supplying a large amount of chakra to his legs, in order to walk on the snow without leaving traces and without crunching it. Having reached the place, at the last moment he dodged a stray katana that flew out of the hands of his Taicho. Having come almost right up to it, Naruto jumped on one of the missing nin, clasping his legs around his neck. The red-eyed one, having filled his hands and kunai with chakra, pierced his head. Don't jump off. He threw off the technique, unsealed his shabby tanto and threw it into the hands of the taicho. After all, their taijutsu was many times worse than kenjutsu. Having done a backflip, Uzumaki jumped away from the battlefield so as not to get in the way. He approached the traitor. Having examined him, he realized that he was conscious, so with a precise blow to the neck, he sent him into oblivion. He printed out a paper with a brush and ink and quickly wrote a chakra-blocking seal, which he immediately hung on his head, tied his hands and sealed it in a scroll. Having sealed the scroll, Naruto looked at his comrades. Many had already finished their fights and were waiting for the last one. Taicho began to approach him. Thank you, you helped me out. The two of them would have pinned me down, he said. But your tanto is a shabby one, of course, he chuckled and handed it to the owner. What I have, I'll earn some money and buy something better. Really? Well done, better to do it yourself than to live off your parents. Probably, he was not in the mood to be frank with a stranger, so he paid more attention to the duel of his comrade, who at that moment sank his katana into the liver of his opponent. Let's clean up and return to our posts. Naruto, hand over the traitor to Mifune-sama. Hi. Naruto stretched on the bed, opening his eyes. Getting up, he ran his hand through his hair and tousled it, as if it usually wasn't carelessly enough. The second year since those events was ending. He had fought on patrol more than once. And, of course, he had become stronger. The albino had dedicated these 2 years to Ken, Tai, Shuriken, Fuin and Ninjutsu. Firstly, because the first 3 disciplines are taught here. And, secondly, Fuinjutsu is a complex art, so now, in a relatively calm part of his life, it is easiest to learn. He has a lot of time, clones, freedom and safety. He also did not neglect his sensorics and his own speed. Uzumaki learned many Hokage techniques from ninjutsu. He did not study elemental techniques, since he did not yet know his elements, but he was going to fix this soon. Naruto did not decide to risk Kuchio's no jutsu either, it was worth becoming stronger before that. However, he signed the contract of the Rashomon Hashirama Gate. The technique is quite complex and he could not summon more than one gate without Kurama's chakra, but even so it is very useful. He studied Minato's Rasengan and created many variations of this technique. Opening curly bracket question mark closing curly bracket. Odama Rasengan is a huge Rasengan. Odama Rasen Tairangan, a huge number of clones use Odama Rasengan. Wakusei Rasengan, one Odama Rasengan, around which there are several ordinary ones. Rasen Cho Tarangan, a huge number of clones use Rasengan. Rasen Rengan, creates 2 Rasengan, i.e. in each hand. Cho Odama Rasengan is a super huge Rasengan. Cho Odama Rasengan is a super ultra huge Rasengan. Shibatama Rasengan is a tiny Rasengan. Mastering Genjutsu was quite difficult, but the albino was able to pull off and use the Senju brothers technique, Kokuangyo no Jutsu. Technique of traveling into the pitch-black darkness. The opponent believes that he is surrounded by darkness, but he hears, feels and can even cause damage. There were no problems with Shuriken Kage Bunshin at all, considering that he could create ordinary clones not even in hundreds, but in thousands. Plus, he practiced controlling Kurama's chakra and could already withstand 6 tails. Improved control over his chakra and could create more detailed limbs from it. He also learned to concentrate the chakra received from the biju in one place, for example, in his hand, for a stronger blow. So much stronger that Tsunade nervously smoked on the sidelines. But taijutsu was not something Naruto liked, despite the fact that he was successful in it, so he rarely used this skill. It is also worth telling in more detail about his success in Fuinjutsu. Uzumaki learned one of Minato's techniques, the memory erasure seal. A useful thing when you don't want to kill a witness. He began to study the seal on his stomach, but so far, despite his rather extensive knowledge, thanks to Kurama, he could not remove it. The albino knew that this was possible. If there is a key, then this key can be forged. However, neither of them wanted to take risks, so they decided to first study Fuin more and, perhaps, go to Uzushio for this. The situation was similar with the Hiraishin that interested him. He roughly understood the Jutsushiki technique formula of both Minato and Nadaime, but his knowledge was not enough to create his own. Speaking of the Sharingan, after awakening the Mangekyo, Naruto couldn't activate it calmly for almost 5 months, the pain was unbearable. By now, he can activate it again painlessly, which can't be said about the Mangekyo. Now, with the help of his abilities, Uzumaki could emerge victorious from a duel with Jonin. I'll explain in advance. Last time I wrote about the same thing about his abilities. I'll explain. Then he maybe could have defeated Chunin if he used the same jutsu, i.e. without nin, gen, ken, etc. Or maybe several. Depends on their level and specialization. After all, he doesn't really have any long-range techniques, so he can only hope for speed, FUNN, Tai, Ken, clones, Rasengan and Sharingan, but he would prefer to leave some of these points as trump cards. This, of course, is without the Biju chakra. With it the albino is much stronger. Naruto cleverly uses his, not very large, dimensions. Considering his speed, he slipped so that the opponent could not keep up with him. Now Uzumaki had grown quite a bit. His height was now about 135.5 centimeters. Otherwise, he had hardly changed, except that he was leaner. By the way, the albino earned quite a bit by participating in patrols. Now he even has his own small house. Of course, he had big discounts because he was still a child, and an orphan at that. It had several rooms. His bedroom with a bed and a closet. A well-equipped kitchen, a bathroom, a toilet, and his small office. In it, he studied Fuinjutsu, read scrolls with Hokage techniques, and so on. Right now, Naruto was going to Mifune-sama. The Namikaze family was sitting at the table, eating dinner. Everyone was rather gloomy, because exactly 2 years ago their brother had died. This time there were no lively conversations, everyone was deep in their thoughts and picking at their plates with forks. That's how Kakashi found them, entering the room. Minato-sensei, everyone turned around at the voice. I think your son is alive. Kakashi. Namikaze cried out, looking pointedly at Menma. But you told him about it, Hitaki replied, taken aback. Sorry, Kakashi-ni, I set you up a little, the younger one said, scratching the back of his head and smiling guiltily. The ash-haired one exhaled resignedly, realizing that he had been tricked. Menma, that is, you. Kushina began fearfully. I really hope that I misunderstood something. Moreover, I was wondering when you would deign to tell me about it. Oh, I'm sorry, my boy, Kushina muttered guiltily. Minato, tell him. You know about the Kyuubi attack, right? After waiting for a nod, the older blonde continued. That day, an unknown person tore the beast out of your mother. In order to save the village, it had to be sealed, and only Uzumaki or Senju could do this. Kushina was weak after giving birth and extracting the Biju, she would have died. Tsunade was not in the village. So, either you or Naruto. He was born a few hours earlier, so he was already more suitable for this. Okay, but that doesn't justify you handing him over to an orphanage, Menma said, crossing his arms over his chest. Kakashi, who also didn't know the details, listened attentively. Suddenly, Kushina's eyes began to fill with tears, and she let out a broken cry. It's my fault. I was scared. I'm not worthy of my clan. We've always stood up for our blood, I taught you that too. But I was emotional, I was hurt and scared, it clouded my mind. Menma looked at her carefully. His mother was being completely sincere, but something in his father's guilty look made him think that she didn't know the whole picture. Part 11. Farewell, Tetsu no Kuni. Commentary on Part 11. Farewell, Tetsu no Kuni. Sorry for being late, a black cat crossed my path, I had to go around it. To-san, train me. Finding his father in the kitchen, Menma immediately approached him with his request. Minato looked at him carefully, and then his gaze glazed over, as if he was immersed in memories. To-san. Menma, you are currently studying at the academy. 3 more years and you will be a shinobi, going on missions and so on. You don't have much time left that you could devote to yourself, your friends, after that there will be much less time. Why do you want to shorten your childhood so much? Menma looked at him in confusion. Son, I screwed up with one of my children, I want at least everything to be okay with you. Please. Okay, To-san, the younger Namikaze said uncertainly. Thank you, Minato said sincerely, ruffling Menma's hair. Then I'll go and invite Sasuke for a walk. Come in, came from the office, and Uzumaki hurried inside. Hello, Mifune-sama. Oh, Naruto, did you want something? Well, you could say that. I wanted to say that it was time to move on. I would like to thank you and your masters for everything you have done for me, the albino said sincerely. Oh, I see. We are glad to have all our guests, so if you are nearby, come visit. By the way, what are you going to do with the house? I'm thinking maybe renting it out while I'm gone. Leave a clone there to keep order. Something like that. I understand you, the old man replied, smiling slightly. Where are you going? I would like to visit my clan's homeland. Uzushio. It was a good village, Mifune nodded to himself. We had many trade agreements, and in general our relations were friendly. We gave them cold arms, they gave us seals. What about a one-time deal like this? What do you mean? You make me a katana, and I will give you the necessary seals. Oh, I agree, but you'll have to stay another half a month. It's okay, I haven't bought everything yet. Returning to his home, the Jinchuriki began to think about how to create a clone. Infinite clones do not exist and it is impossible to make them. The easiest way is to use the seal with clones from Konoha as a basis, but change it, set a timer for a month and exit the seal, which the seal did not do before. I had to rack my brains a little, but in a few hours the seal was ready and installed on the mailbox. Having completed the necessary seal, he sat down at the ones Mifune had told him. Regular sealing scrolls, a temperature control seal, steel reinforcing seals, elemental seals. This seal was a kind of reserve, chakra was poured into it in advance, be it regular, raiden or fudan, it remained in the seal, and it could be used on a weapon if you did not want to waste your chakra or if your chakra was almost gone, a restoration seal, which, when chakra was supplied, restored the blade from damage and some other seals. Uzumaki also prepared some seals for his katana. Now Naruto was resting with his eyes closed. Creating so many seals was very exhausting, especially since each of them needed to be charged with chakra, otherwise it would just be a piece of paper with ordinary kanji. Fuinjutsu was not only about writing the seal correctly, it was also about charging it with chakra correctly. Otherwise, it could even be fatal. No one could know how the seal would behave if its components were not launched in the order they were supposed to. Kurama, Uzumaki called, muttering under his breath, I was thinking, that piece of paper hanging on your cage is not the seal itself. Maybe I should at least take it off. What if I take over your body? The fox chuckled. Yes, okay. So what do you think? I'll be glad if it works. And it will be easier for you to control my chakra. But during the removal, there might be a splash and some tails might appear. Well, then let's try. The red eyes lit up with an idea and Naruto found himself in the subconscious. Well then. He rose into the air and was about to rip the seal off, gradually tearing it off. He felt tails of chakra appearing on him. 1, 3, 6, 8. Suddenly his hand was intercepted and thrown away from the seal. It was a man of about 50 or 60 years old. He was dressed in a black jumpsuit with mesh wristbands and light green armor. On his right arm was a long shield. TCH, what the hell are you doing in my subconscious? Naruto-kun, even then I saw what decision Minato made about you, so I asked Shinigami to seal part of my chakra, so that if anything happened, I could save the village from a new invasion of the Kyuubi. Noble, thank you, but I don't need your help, I suggest you leave, Naruto said. And who the hell are you? Sandaime Hokage, the old man turned around and his eyes widened. You. Me, yes, me. More specifically, please. You look a lot like Sensei, he breathed out. Your sensei is the Nadaime, if I'm not mistaken, Hiruzen nodded, and Naruto chuckled. You didn't reveal Uzushio to me. Well, there is no America. It seems that your friend, Kosuke-san, also compared me. Kosuke. The old man blinked. He's right, Sarutobi nodded. Both your appearance and manners are similar to Tobirama-sensei's. At first glance, at least. It irritates me that you all compare me to him. He may be a great man, but I am different anyway. He also got offended when he was compared to his brother. Hiruzen closed his eyes and sighed nostalgically, not noticing how Uzumaki's eye twitched. Having decided that it was time to stop communicating, since it was using up more nerve cells than Naruto was getting any benefit from, he easily jumped to the cage and tore off the seal with one movement. Kurama ran into the gates, and they swung open. Uzumaki, without thinking, jumped on the fox's head. Hit him with a Bijudama. Naruto yelled. Kyuubi quickly created a small ball, which he immediately shrunk and ate, attacking the old man with a blast wave. Well, that was easy, he chuckled as the smoke cleared. The fox was suddenly pulled back into the cage, and the albino in the opposite direction. The gate began to creak back together as Kurama resisted the pull. He was completely sucked in and the gate slammed shut with a loud clang, and the lock resealed. Well, now we know that the seal can't be broken by physical force. It's probably being restored. Damn old man. We'll have to find the key after all, Kurama responded dully. He hadn't had time to enjoy his freedom at all. Don't be sad, I think we'll find what we need in Uzu. So, Naruto, here is your katana, Mifune said, holding out the weapon. The katana was long, almost a meter, and 75 centimeters, not counting the handle. The blade was the most ordinary, not counting the special steel and forging of Tetsu no Kuni, as well as the barely noticeable small seals that were written on the blunt side of the blade. The handle was black, with a very small and thin inscription, Tetsu no Kuni, written in gold. The habaki, the ring with which the blade is attached to the handle, was also gold. Uzumaki's red eyes lit up as he looked at his new weapon. He had an inexpensive wakizashi that he had bought when he broke his first tanto. Now he could be proud of his katana. He had already passed on the seals that he should have prepared, especially since it wasn't difficult, so many of the seals were already on his katana. Thank you, Mifune-sama, Naruto said, nodding briefly to the old man. We decided to make it big, not a smaller version. It might not be as comfortable for you now, but you won't always be 130, the commander-in-chief winked cheerfully at the white-haired man. Yes, I understand already. Can I have a sparring session with sensei before I leave? I think so. I'll call him. Hey, Kodo. Naruto stood with a brand new katana in front of his sensei. He always found it boring to fight his classmates. He always defeated them. He rarely fought with his teacher, so he could only evaluate his skills against the missing nin that he could sometimes meet. In fact, he found many friends among the samurai. I hope for a good fight, Naruto, Atsushi said. Me too. A short grin crossed his face for a second before fading. Both of them simultaneously broke away at high speed. Sensei had physical strength and experience, Naruto had speed, agility and chakra volume. A second before entering the clinch, both swords lit up with chakra. They clashed with katanas and instantly bounced off each other. Both stood at a distance, waiting for the second to attack. The first got tired of waiting for the elder, so he rushed forward, filling his katana and body with chakra. Feeling this with his sensory abilities, Naruto moved to the side, adding speed to sensei with a kick to the back. The man flew nose first into the ground, putting his hands out, he went into a somersault. Coming out of it, he immediately had to dodge a blow from the katana of the Uzumaki waiting for him. The man rolled to the side, thinking about how to take over the initiative of the fight. Having bet on his physical strength, he jumped to his feet and tried to enter the clinch. Naruto easily dodged, trying to avoid such moments, knowing his weaknesses. He immediately had to block to protect himself from another blow that sensei delivered from a spinning back. Another. Block. Another. A few centimeters before another. First blood. Another. Naruto moves the katana in an arc to the side, kicking Atsushi in the chin, and immediately jumped back, glancing at the wound on his shoulder. Part of the arm, not the bone near the neck. It immediately became clear that the old warrior had never fought him at full strength during any training session. Uzumaki did not have a particular advantage in speed and agility, as he initially thought. The conclusion came by itself. It was necessary to make the enemy believe that he had won, and then win. Having filled his body with chakra, the white-haired man rushed at the sensei, but at the last moment he turned around, jumping over the sensei and sharply carrying out a horizontal blow. Atsushi also easily blocked the blow, putting up a block. The elder made a footrest to avoid which Uzumaki jumped up. Sensei immediately struck. Naruto puts up a block, however, because he was in the air, he flew off hard and fell to the ground. The teacher jumped up to him, raising his katana. The Jinchuriki knew that he would stop it when the white-haired man himself could not get away. It's still a bit weak for my level, but not many shinobi can make me tense up. You're a good boy, Atsushi said, smiling slightly. Minato's eldest son grinned. They said it as if I had already lost. He suddenly charged his legs with chakra and twisted, dropping his sensei to the ground, instantly jumping up to him and holding his katana to his throat. I would never win against you in a fair fight, sensei. But I am still a shinobi, Naruto said, breathing heavily, as it was difficult to make such a dash. I didn't expect that. Okay, you win, the man chuckled. Uzumaki pulled the blade away and helped him up. Thank you for everything, sensei. Commentary on Part 11. Farewell, Tetsu no Kuni. Action scenes and fights are not what I am a pro at, so please rate it if it is not too much trouble. If it is too much trouble, please write 2. Part 12. Konoha. Commentary on Part 12. Konoha. I can't promise, but I'll try to post chapters more often. After all, summer has come, and all that, more time, less studying. Rejoice, brother, we are leaving, as you said, the freezer or Tetsu no Kuni, Naruto said, stroking the door frame of his house. Come on, kid, don't slow down, I'm already sick of snow and ice. What don't you like here? It's cold, answered the fox. Uzumaki chuckled and walked towards the main gate. He looked nostalgically at the houses, training grounds, and some of the buildings where they gathered before going out on duty. Memories filled his head as he headed out of the village. Naruto compared this moment to when he left Konoha. It wasn't as sad then as it was now. Although he liked Tetsu no Kuni less than his home village, the people here were much nicer. Perhaps he would be completely different if there were such people in Konoha. He would be studying at the Shinobi Academy now, perhaps he would have made friends with a few guys from his class. And right now he would be sitting with them on the roof of some 3-story building and eating dango, discussing some fresh news. Uzumaki shook his head, trying to clear these thoughts from his mind. This will no longer happen, his past can no longer be changed. He might as well think about how he would have lived if Minato had not sent him to an orphanage. I wonder if he had any relatives besides Minato, Kushina, and Menma. You know, the other Uzumaki, or maybe Namikaze's parents. That's interesting. By the way, who were his parents anyway? As far as Naruto knew, the Yondaime grew up in an orphanage. He could look into that in Konoha. He was just about to go there. Lately, his seals have been transmitting a lot about unrest in the village. Not the best things have started happening there. Of course, Uchiha Aikizoku is involved in this. What troublemakers they are. According to the information from the village, the clan wants to stage a coup, but he learned from Root that it was the elders who have been pushing them to do this for quite some time, so that they can then stage a genocide. At first, Naruto didn't pay much attention, but it seems that Minato is losing ground and the clan may soon cease to exist if something is not done. And this clan is very strong, so Uzumaki would not want to lose it. The village would be greatly weakened by such a loss, which could lead to a new war. Hey, young man, someone called out to him. Naruto sensed the chakra of one of his comrades nearby. You know, come and see us. Sometimes, you know. I can't promise that I'll be able to visit you in the next couple of years, but I'll definitely drop by later, and maybe even earlier if I'm passing through, the albino answered after thinking for a moment. The man next to him smiled slightly. Come on, big guy, at least smile, you're traveling around, you've already been to at least 2 countries and you're going somewhere again, Yorichi laughed at him. Go and get a smile out of Ryu, why is it always me? Naruto asked with a sigh. Because Ryu isn't going anywhere. Logical. Okay, I'm going. Uzumaki turned around and realized that he was already standing at the gate, waving his hand to his friend, he disappeared into Shunshin. On the way to the leaf, Naruto used henge. Now he had no scars, his skin became dark, his eyes, like his straight hair, were black. He did not change his clothes, so he was in a mesh t-shirt, black pants, standard shinobi sandals of the same color, bandages on his shins, a black tight sweater with a low smell, partially exposing his chest and a dark blue haori. Uzumaki made several seals, one of them completely hid Kurama's chakra, the second, his chakra, the third strengthened henge so that it would not dissipate and so that the Byakugan or Sharingan could not see him. Hello, what is your purpose in coming to us? I am a traveler, having visited Tanzaku, I heard that your village has a great history. I became interested. Yes, it's true. Be sure to visit the Hokage Rock, it has a very beautiful view. The guy with long, tousled black hair and eyes of the same color, and a bandage across the bridge of his nose, told him with a friendly smile. Okay, thank you, he nodded. Can you tell me where the nearest hotel is? There are a few on the main street. Just go straight ahead, Naruto nodded and walked in the direction indicated. However, he turned away at the first opportunity. He was interested to see how Itachi and Shisui were doing. The teenagers were found in a small forest near the Uchiha quarter. Both looked rather gloomy and did not look like those boys at all, only their appearance and genius were similar to the clan. Well, life has really taken its toll on you. The teenagers turned around, looking at the unfamiliar child without chakra, who was clearly mocking them. Who are you? Itachi asked calmly. Naruto chuckled, dispelling henge and restoring it a few seconds later. Don't call me by my name. I'm actually dead, Uzumaki chuckled. The teenager's eyes lit up. You're alive. Shisui flew up to him and hugged him tightly. The albino allowed himself a smile and returned the hug. It won't be that easy to get rid of me. We are glad that you are alive and well. Well, now yes, when I first got out, there was not a single healthy spot on me. Even I, considering that I am a Jinchuriki, still have scars. Well, now I look even more like the Nadaime. Have you seen the scars on my face? The Uchiha nodded with cheerful grins. TCH, come on. Tell me instead, my dears, what the hell is going on with your clan? Both teenagers deflated. Well, how can I put it more simply? I know about the rebellion and pressure. I need more specifics. Itachi and Shisui looked at him as if he were a new Biju. The elders are trying to drive us out. They want to commit genocide. Yondaime protected us, but it seems he's not doing a good job of it. I see. If it works out, I will help you. What? Ahem. What are you planning? I want to dig around in the archives. I was planning to do that before. And, by the way, for now, call me Kasuya. Okay. How about some dango? Naruto stood near the Hokage's residence. Next to him was his clone. He had a different henge. He had light skin, black eyes and long, slightly shaggy hair of the same color. I'm going to the residence. You're going to the Anbu base. Okay. The clone nodded slightly and went in the right direction. Just as the original was about to go to the residence, Minato came out of it. The albino immediately frowned. He thought for a long time. Naruto couldn't forgive him. Because of this man, and not only because of him. He lost his childhood, probably partly a normal nervous system. Because, well, he admitted that he had become a little paranoid. He had been beaten so many times. Everyone hated him. Uzumaki frowned, driving unnecessary thoughts out of his head and, concentrating, headed towards the residence. He easily walked inside and began to expand the range of his sensory abilities. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle when he felt an empty zone in the ground. During his stay in Tetsu no Kuni, he had trained himself well in this area. Chakra is everywhere, in everyone and everything. Even in the ground, there are different insects that carry chakra, but that's not the main thing. Shinobi rarely have good enough control not to waste chakra. Often, part of the chakra dissipates, but does not disappear, but gradually becomes natural. It remains in the air, water and in the same ground. There are no empty zones. Although not everyone can find out about this, you really need to be a good sensor for this. Not every Yamanaka or Hyuga is capable of this. After looking around, Uzumaki changed henge to Anbu clothes with Itachi's mask. Getting to the archive of the captain of the Anbu team was not too difficult. Pass through a few posts, put some pressure on his position, and he was at his destination. Having set up one of the simplest barriers that slowed down time. 45 minutes outside, 60 minutes inside, which Kurama knew from the past. Naruto put a seal on the door so that no one could enter and a seal that concealed sounds. Uzumaki created several dozen clones that immediately scattered throughout the archive in search of something interesting. They were mainly looking for information related to him, the Uchiha clan and Namikaze Minato. After 10 minutes, one of the clones dissipated, reporting that the Yondaime was given to the orphanage by a woman with black eyes and hair, with light skin. In shabby clothes and died literally a few days later. I can't say for sure, but you're a small fry, you look like an albino senju. I wouldn't be surprised if Namikaze's dad was him. It may be difficult to verify, you understand. Well, yes, especially since it's not that important. I was just curious, Naruto agreed with his red-haired friend, continuing to search for information. However, as he expected, there wasn't much information here. The Anbu didn't really know anything about the elders' machinations, although judging by the number of reports about them, they were at least being followed. They were suspected, but they couldn't find any evidence. It remained to hope that the clones in Anbu were doing much better. After copying some scrolls with incriminating information on important and influential people in Konoha and elsewhere, as well as interesting events that took place in the village and information about which was hidden, Naruto disappeared from the residence along with the scrolls, clones, seals and barriers. How about some dango? Uzumaki asked, appearing next to Shisui and Itachi, still in the latter's Anbu uniform. The older Uchiha blinked, looking at another Itachi, and then turned his gaze to the real one. I always knew you were similar in some way, Shisui said, pointing at both of them. You're different personalities of the same person. Kami, Shisui, he seems to be an adult, Naruto exhaled, gradually taking on the appearance of his first henge. How do you communicate with him, Itachi? He asked, holding out several dango sticks. I sometimes wonder how I haven't gone crazy with him yet, Itachi replied, looking skeptically at his friend, who looked as if he had revealed his worst secret. Yeah, can I spend the night at your place, Shisui? Naruto asked, looking at the Uchiha, who was starting to come to his senses. Oh, yes, of course. Are you staying in Konoha for long? I won't know everything I wanted yet. Besides, I hope to leave the Uchiha clan alive in the village, so there's still time. Come on, Tell me what's new with you. Clones at the Anbu base no. Taicho, what are we looking for? Asked one of the clones of the main double. Information about Namikaze Minato, Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, Namikaze Uzumaki Menma, Uzumaki Kushina. About their possible relatives, Konoha elders, about Shimura Danzo. About other influential people, strong Jonin, Anbu. About the situation with the Uchiha clan. You know this as well as I do. Well, maybe the original had some other thoughts when they created you. There wasn't. Let's get to work. Taicho, there is information about the Yondaime's students here, one of the clones said, copying the folder. Uchiha Obito, Nohara Rin, and Hitaki Kakashi. Something interesting? He asked, looking at his folder. Yes, almost everyone is dead. Uchiha Obito saved Hitaki Kakashi, sacrificing himself. Before dying he gave his friend his Sharingan. Nohara Rin jumped on Kakashi's Reikiri. Sanbi was sealed in her and a genjutsu was imposed, which would force the Biju to destroy Konoha. What do you say, Kurama? Asked the lead clone. I don't think anything. Sanbi died then together with the girl. Now, probably, he has already been reborn and is sleeping in some lake. Taicho, I found something interesting about the Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki clans. All the clones turned to the speaking clone. Neither Itachi nor Shisui could understand why their friend suddenly froze and a fox-like grin appeared on his face. Part 13. The Uchiha Problem. Hey, Kasuya, Shisui called cautiously. What's wrong? Uzumaki grinned. One of my clones just dispersed. And who dispelled it? Itachi asked, frowning. He himself. The albino closed his eyes, smiling at the corners of his lips. And now I know quite a lot. For example, the younger Uchiha asked, squinting. For example, what happened to the Uzumaki and Senju clans, how your clan was set up and its reputation was ruined, and also what was planned for it in the future. And, what? Shisui asked slowly. Are you more interested in experimenting with your dojutsu or cultivating young obedient Uchiha? Naruto chuckled. The dango stick broke in Itachi's hand. Damn old men, the elder one hissed. Maybe, we should go to a less crowded place to talk about this. Yes, let's go, Shisui said, putting his hands on his friend's shoulders and using shunshin, he moved to the abandoned building. Where are we? Uzumaki asked. It was a fairly large, well-preserved building in light colors. On one of the walls, he was surprised to find a mon of the Senju clan. On the same side, there was a small elevation. Literally a few steps. On the sides, there were zabatons. Flat seat cushions covered in a layer of dust. On the walls was, apparently, a family tree of the main family. The beginning was clearly erased, because there were several burnt photos that smoothly turned into a certain man with the name, Otsutsuki Hagoromo. Which is strange, if the tree belonged to Senju. 2 branches came from it, one name was erased, but the second remained Otsutsuki Ashura. Many branches came from it. Naruto was slightly surprised when he followed one and came across the name Uzumaki. However, there were legends around the world about the relationship between Uzumaki and Senju. Without dwelling on it, he ran his eyes along another branch that went to the neighboring wall. There were fewer shoots closer to the end. At the end, there were already more names familiar to him. Senju Butsuma, from whom came Senju Hashirama, Tobarama, Kawarama and Itama. There were no branches from the 2 younger ones, but the older ones tried. There were 4 branches from Shodai Hokage. Uzumaki Mitsuru, Uzumaki Chisho, Senju Hideo and Senju Itama, apparently in honor of his brother. It was strange that only in honor of one. Although, he had some ideas why that was so. Because there was an arrow from Senju Tobarama too, but there was a question mark where the photo should have been. Maybe the child was kidnapped or something like that. And, Uzumaki assumed that the child was supposed to be named Kawarama. How did you get in here? Naruto asked. I thought the area was under a barrier. That's right, Shisui nodded. My grandfather was Tobarama-sama's student, and later became a good friend. He was a frequent guest in the clan and told me a lot. Sounds like something I'd like to hear, Naruto chuckled. Why? The elder Uchiha asked, making a sly face. PFF'd, you could say these are my roots, Uzumaki grinned, pointing to the Uzumaki line on the tree. The same sneaky bastard as Itachi, Shisui snorted resentfully. Okay, let's get back to what your clone found, the Uchiha heir said, interrupting his friend's speech. Ahem, yes, they were supposed to kill Shisui, take his eyes, and use them on you, Itachi. You would slaughter the entire adult population of your clan, leaving only children under 2 years old, under the pretext that Uchiha Ikizoku allegedly wanted to destroy Konoha. You would become a nanny for the remaining children, who would tell them that they need to obey Homura-sama and Kaharu-sama. Well, and then you would become an exemplary family man who would give birth to even more little obedient Uchiha in the village. All the dead members of your clan would have their eyes taken. From what I understand, they wanted to leave all the Mangekyo just like that, send some of the regular ones for experiments and research, and use the rest for their own needs. What else do you know? Itachi asked, barely holding back his ki. About 40 years ago, the Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki clans wanted to unite into one. Then your great-grandfather, Itachi, became the head of your clan. Uchiha Shingetsu, if I'm not mistaken. Our dear elders were then about 25. Well, they were ardent patriots of their village. But their idea of patriotism is somewhat distorted. Everything that can bring strength into the house, everything that brings danger away. Only more cruelly. Unfortunately, they do not see that they themselves bring danger. I think the best option would be to kill them, Naruto summed up, throwing a kunai, but I can't handle it alone, he added hintingly. Maybe it's better to leave them to the Hokage? Shisui asked uncertainly, two pairs of red eyes staring at him. Naruto's were naturally red, Itachi's had his Sharingan activated. You're too naive for this profession, Uzumaki said dryly, pursing his lips. Leave it to the Hokage, who has greatly lost his position. Itachi added. I just suggested. Shisui began to deny, raising his hands. But simply killing isn't an option either, the albino frowned. I don't trust the Konohagakure no Sato government. Danzo-san is the most sane of them all. Minato has obviously gotten carried away playing the hero, and Homura and Kaharu are running part of the Anbu. No, they can do that from prison. It would be best to give the documents to Danzo-san, but it shouldn't be you. Your chakra will obviously be recognized, but mine won't be. Did they give you any deadlines? Or anything like that? We'll solve the problem with the clan by the end of the week, or they'll decide for themselves, Itachi said. Are you kidding me? Today is Friday. We're going to the elders tomorrow, the Uchiha nodded. What do we know about their abilities? Naruto asked the Uchiha. Only that they are the Nadaime students, Shisui shrugged. TCH. Okay, let's go. The three of them walked through the underground corridors of the root base. It would be nice to kill them quietly. Just slit their throats while they slept. But it was unlikely that they were sleeping right now. That they were still in their office and that their chakra was circulating too fast for someone who could sleep. Naruto chuckled as they reached the door and knocked on it. Come in, an old voice answered them. How come they haven't fallen apart yet, seriously? Well, thank you, Naruto said, opening the door and grinning. The Uchiha followed him in, pleased. You've relaxed so much in your catacombs, he chuckled, made a concentration sign with one hand, and a barrier rose in the room, preventing those around him from hearing what was happening here or the excess chakra. The next moment, the hinge fell off him. I'm so glad to see you, his red eyes sparkled, while the corners of them trembled, rising into a barely noticeable smile. Kyuubi, what a meeting, Kaharu hissed. Oh, so you want to see him? Very well, Uzumaki said. The fox's chakra began to ooze from his body. I'll even let you talk, his voice took on a growling tone due to the Biju's chakra. Haven't seen you for 9 years, brats, Kyuubi said. The elders' eyes widened in fear as their hands began to shake. Demon. Homura tried to put a purification seal on the fox, which would dispel the demonic chakra. But Kurama himself did not want this at all. It was not very often that Naruto allowed him to take control of his body, so he wanted to play a little. Uchiha Gaki, take the old woman. He is mine, a predatory grin played on Uzumaki's face, which looked very strange and unusual on him. Homura jumped away from him towards the barrier and his chakra began to be absorbed into him. The old man quickly realized this and jumped away from the fox. Kurama chuckled and in one blurry movement approached him, grabbing him by the neck. Uzumaki had developed his body well in speed and agility, and coupled with his chakra, he could be very, very fast. I could break your neck. The fox purred, but that would be boring, wouldn't it? Do you want to play too? Homura was silent, but that didn't stop him. I'm glad. Pushing the elder into the barrier, he immediately closed in, grabbing him by the shirt, piercing it with his claws, leaving deep cuts on his chest, and pressed him into the barrier, lifting him off the ground. Homura struggled in his hand, trying to get out. But Kurama compensated for his lack of physical strength with a large amount of chakra. Luckily, The SCC was well prepared for this. After all, they often practiced this. Besides, Uzumaki constantly used chakra to increase his strength. Yes, his age had its disadvantages. Kurama watched with pleasure as the old man's chakra disappeared rather quickly. The elder himself was wasting away before his eyes. More and more wrinkles appeared on his skin. His cheeks were sunken, his irises were very dull, and his eyes themselves seemed to be about to bulge out of their sockets. Kyuubi noticed one of the Uchiha using Gokaku no Jutsu. Great Fireball threw the half-dead body into the fire and sighed in disappointment. This was not interesting at all. Two weak opponents. I wish I could bite Madara. Unfortunately, he died long ago. Too bad, the fox would not mind counting all his bones. But since that was impossible, he simply sat on the table and watched as Shisui's wakizashi chopped off Kaharu's head. Not at all interesting. Naruto exhaled again and regained control. Oh, that's it. Uzumaki stood up, stretching. How about we look at something useful here? It's unlikely that there will be anything here, but we can try, Itachi nodded. Maybe we should go with you. Shisui asked worriedly, looking at his friend under the Anbu henge. He didn't like the fact that the albino was going alone to Minato's office, where Danzo was hanging around for some reason. Naruto frowned, thinking. You can come with me as a guarantee that I can be trusted. But you will not say anything, Uzumaki said seriously. Okay, the Uchiha quickly agreed. Naruto knocked on the door and as soon as he heard, come in, he was inside and once again put up a barrier that prevented the Anbu from getting in. Danzo and Minato took a quick look at the situation. Minato left the table as several of his kunai appeared in his hand. Danzo simply stood up, putting his cane aside. Does this count as treason, Uchiha? Shimura asked. They are here as a guarantee that you can trust me, Uzumaki began, channeling chakra into his vocal cords to change it. His voice became lower and more resonant. Believe. Minato raised an eyebrow. I have something you would like to see. A scroll appeared from the seal on his wrist. Naruto unfolded it and unsealed a stack of documents. He turned them face down to the men. They could see the titles of some of them. For example, Senju Tobarama's order, which was dated the year of the second Hokage's death. Uchiha Ikizoku genocide, and others. I suppose you're interested. The albino's voice held a grin. Part 14. Hidden Identity. Commentary on Part 14. Hidden Personality. Wow, yes, I'm alive. This part was very difficult for me. I hope it won't be like this in the future and parts will come out more often. But I won't promise anything. After all, I have the Unified State exam this year and other such nonsense that eats up my time and doesn't even choke. I suppose you're interested. The albino's voice held a grin. Silence fell in the office as the Hokage and the elder frowned at the reports and their names, and then at the teenagers who had come here. And if they knew Itachi and Shisui, two more geniuses of the Uchiha clan, they could not recognize the third. Moreover, Danzo could bet Konoha itself that the Anbu clothes were henge. Where did you get this? Danzo asked, frowning at his sensei's name. And why are you passing this on to us? Information from the source, Naruto answered calmly. My goals. He paused, as if considering his answer. It just so happens that this village is dear to me. So I would not want it to be destroyed due to the vile actions of the higher-ups. The road. Danzo narrowed his eyes. I already said this and I don't want to repeat myself. There is a lot of information about the actions of Mitokado Homura and Udatane Kaharu here. For example, Naruto demonstratively opened the folders, taking out one of them. On the folder were drawn the mons of the Senju, Uchiha and Uzumaki clans. Without hurrying, he opened the folder, flipping through several pages. Did you know that the Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki wanted to unite into one clan? Senju Hashirama, Uchiha Shingetsu, and Uzumaki Ashina even met several times to discuss it. The Senju clan, mysteriously, he emphasized the words with a bunch of venom and sarcasm, disappeared. The Uchiha clan is now on the verge of genocide. As for Uzumaki Ikizoku, Naruto took out a folder enclosed in this one. Your dear friends, he nodded at Danzo, sold information to Kurigakure no Sato, Kumogakure no Sato, and Iwagakure no Sato. In exchange, they received a large sum of money, some genomes of these villages, and later some fuinjutsu techniques. An unexpected delegation from Konohagakure no Sato broke the barrier of Uzushiogakure no Sato from the inside. And they stole Uzumaki Ashina's body, but I won't mention that, Naruto thought. That's very useful information, Minato nodded. What do you want for it? I don't need anything, he shook his head. I'll just ask you to sort out the situation with the Uchiha. The founding clan was unfairly deprived of all power, and even pushed to the edge of the village. It was Uchiha who controlled the Kyuubi. Minato pursed his lips. Uzumaki snorted in irritation. As if there are no apostates in other clans, and with your policies you seem to be pushing the others to leave. Naruto walked closer to Danzo, handing him the folders, opened the scroll and passed it on, hinting that this was not all the information. Making a concentration seal, the albino removed the barrier and disappeared into Shunshin without effects. Itachi, Shisui, who was that? Minato asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, the elder Uchiha shook his head. In any case, he gave us the information I've been trying to get for a long time, Danzo said, leafing through the folders. Koharu and Homura will at least be sentenced to life imprisonment, at most, executed. Finally, they'll stop messing things up for me en route. Uzumaki carefully walked along the corridor of the underground bunker, carefully checking everything with sensors, looking for root Anbu. Naruto did not want to leave the body of Ashina, the last head of Uzumaki and the founder of Uzushiogakure here. Especially since he was heading to Uzushio, it would be a huge stupidity not to bury him on his native soil. Unfortunately, Naruto couldn't know where exactly his body was or what condition it was in. So he had to bypass most of the dungeons. Luckily, he was pretty good at hiding his chakra, so it wasn't that hard to bypass all the shinobi. Unfortunately, he couldn't always be lucky. However, it was logical. There was nothing interesting in any of the unguarded corridors. Only training grounds with dormitories and classrooms. Therefore, Naruto sighed heavily and had to continue moving even more carefully. In addition, he had to use Toden Jutsu, transparent escape technique, and several Fuinjutsu seals. He didn't know how else to pass unnoticed. No, he could, of course, kill everyone, but that was not an option at all. There were about 7 or 8 protected corridors in the entire web of underground corridors. Uzumaki suspected that there must be various laboratories and archives with forbidden techniques known to Konoha, which was also interesting to him. In one of these archives, Naruto found Hidenjutsu of different clans of Konoha. He was only interested in some techniques of the Hyuga, Nara and Yamanaka clans. It never hurts to be able to get into someone's head, tie someone up without having anything at hand, or learn to release chakra through all tenketsu. Among other things, Uzumaki discovered an interesting technique called Dohatsuden Fury, a technique from fillers. It was somewhat similar to Kaden Hyuga, but could destroy entire villages. A technique of the Tsuchigumo clan, capable of destroying entire villages. Having copied this scroll just in case, Naruto went on. However, before he could even leave the room, he felt someone heading his way. The albino, having checked the effect of the seals and techniques, climbed the wall, attaching himself to the corner with chakra. The realization that he had, frankly, screwed up, overtook him as soon as he saw the gaze of the activated Byakugan on him. Naruto saw the confusion of the fighter, who apparently came to his senses and was about to raise the alarm, but did not have time. Uzumaki appeared in front of him, touching the back of his head. Konrin Jubaku no In, cursed seal of confusion, non-canon, action, I think, plus or minus understandable, Naruto muttered, causing the fighter to start acting strangely. Fortunately, the memory erasure of recent events is included. However, the seal will remain in the subconscious, which was bad. There is an Uzumaki in the village, which means someone could find out his work. Well, this will teach him a lesson about what happens when you don't secure the Toden Jutsu with a seal from the various eyeballs. Calm down, little one, they can only understand that this is Uzumaki's work. No one saw your seals, so no one will be able to pin you down, the fox yawned in his subconscious. You're right, Kurama-ni. It's time to move on. I hope the seal's effect will end before he's found, otherwise. It won't be very pleasant. Danzo-san can connect the mysterious stranger and the penetration into his basements. I wouldn't want my Uzumaki affiliation to be revealed. They, of course, could also suggest the Senju, however. They seem to have died out. It's unlikely that any of them suddenly resurrected, and Konoha hasn't given up on Tsunade, Naruto thought discontentedly. Why Uzumaki right away? Those same Jiraiya and Orochimaru don't have clans at all, but they figure things out. Arguments for the sake of arguments often start between them. Simply because they both love good discussions. However, this is rare. Kurama, the albino chuckled. Like Uzumaki, the fox snorted. Okay, Naruto let out a quiet chuckle, time to move on. The next 2 corridors were nothing but nerves, as Uzumaki walked around all the root employees along the wall, trying not to repeat the situation with that Hyuga. His efforts paid off, at least no one else could notice him. Opening the door to the next room, the albino expected more shelves with scrolls, however. This time he was blinded by a bright light. Mentally cursing and snorting in irritation at his albinism, and therefore his eyes sensitive to light, Naruto looked around. There was a laboratory here. Many huge cabinets, shelves, different tables with a huge number of medical instruments, human and other organs. How many folders there were, and it was downright scary to look at. However, the attention of the red eyes was drawn to the couch, on which there was a person. Holy Kami, how do they even keep him in good condition? Even his skin looks like he just died. Light skin, white hair, lots of scars, red eyes. Senju Tobirama, Kyuubi drawled in his thoughts, while Uzumaki himself was still in a daze. However, after the fox's phrase, he came to his senses, immediately becoming enraged. How dare they experiment on the body of one of the founders of this village? On the body of their own teacher. Taking a deep breath and exhaling, Naruto tried to calm down. Kurama killed them, he avenged everyone who suffered from the greedy hands of the elders. The albino looked at his near copy in fascination. In fact, they were barely different. Naruto's features were softer, like a mix of Tobirama-sama and Kushina. The Senju's face was now striped, which, as it turned out, had always been painted on. It would be appropriate to blame him for such stupidity, because of which Uzumaki himself now has real scars on his face. But he clearly understood that it was not the Nadaime who was to blame for this, but stupid people. The dead man, unsurprisingly, was several times larger than the still-growing Naruto. The second one stood out for his good muscles and not short stature. Most likely, he was even taller than his dad. In fact, it was very strange to stand and look at the naked Nadaime on the couch. He needs to be removed from here too. Really. Definitely not in Uzushio. He has a grave here. And these. Naruto pursed his lips, ungrateful hypocrites even desecrated it. Since Tobirama is here, then perhaps his older brother will be here too, we'll have to see, but for now, seal his body, you can't carry him in your hands, you won't even be able to lift him without chakra. Although, maybe rip a hair out of him. I don't believe in such amazing coincidences, but I want to make sure, Kurama drawled. You're right, the albino carefully brought his hand closer to the equally white hair. For some reason, it seemed that right now the Nadaime would open his eyes and grab his hand, and then, to put it mildly, scold him. However, this did not happen. Tobirama ignored the brazen interference in his personal space and the ceiling. The scroll soon found itself in the seal on Naruto's hand, where the hair went after. After wandering around the lab, he soon found the body of the elder Senju. They were like opposites of each other in everything except, perhaps, height and build. Hashirama had dark skin, long hair, which was black, like his eyes. For some reason, it reminded Naruto of yin and yang. Although, neither of them were that evil. Uzumaki thought that perhaps the elder Senju could be the heart of their duet, while the younger one was the brain. Remembering that he hadn't come here to philosophize, the albino moved on. There was nothing interesting in the next corridor. Of course, he couldn't have been so lucky. However, fate turned to him. Sideways, because a couple of people who were about to start doing something with Uzumaki Ashina's body right now were clearly not in his plans. Frantically remembering what he could do, Naruto activated the Sharingan, put each scientist in a genjutsu, making them think that they were about to do their job. However, Ashina would no longer be in the lab. Only after leaving the labyrinths of root, Naruto allowed himself to relax a little. Just a little, he was still in Konoha, and he was still considered dead. Well, now he had to go and bury Senju. As far as Uzumaki himself remembered, their resting place was in the Konoha cemetery, so he headed there. Imagine his surprise when he saw Minato and Kushina. The woman was sobbing uncontrollably on the grave, and here it was especially surprising, Naruto himself. For some reason, the albino did not expect to see such a picture. Namikaze tried to calm his wife down, however, rather unsuccessfully. You don't understand, Minato. It's me. It's all my fault. I betrayed the covenants of blood. I kicked my son out of the house. I doomed him to loneliness. To hunger, to a terrible childhood. I doomed him to death at the age of 7, Minato. Hugging herself around the waist, holding her mouth with her other hand, the woman squeezed her eyes shut, trying to hold back her tears. Naruto stood and for some reason couldn't stop himself from listening and looking sideways at them. Of course, he didn't reveal himself and pretended quite successfully that he was visiting a certain Hitaki Yoroshi. Somewhere inside, for some reason, it became warm from the realization that Kushina cared, although he couldn't fully understand the reason. Unlike Kurama, who didn't have any trouble guessing that this was what a 9-year-old boy felt, almost killed by everything that was happening in his life, who simply lacked motherly love. The albino, trying to ignore this strange feeling, noticed something strange about Minato. He hid it quite well, but his face expressed a strange mixture of pain, guilt and annoyance when he looked at his wife, and his chakra twitched every time he said something to his wife. As if he had deceived the poor woman and now he felt unbearable pain because of it. And, apparently, Naruto himself was involved in this as well. And if you pay attention to the dialogue, everything becomes too simple. Kushina's guilt was clearly not as great as she thought. Trying not to dwell on it, Naruto walked towards the Hokage's tombs, where he had returned the bodies of the two great warriors. Commentary on Part 14. Hidden Personality. Hey, my good friend has an interesting job. If anyone is interested. Part 15. The water was slightly turbulent under his feet, the sun was shining at its zenith, and Naruto was running towards Uzushio across the ocean. He was extremely pleased that it was calm now and nothing was stopping him from calmly heading to his destination. Although Uzumaki did not know the exact location of the island, he could guess the approximate direction and location after reading various reports from the Root Anbu archive and maps from there. Kurama also made his guesses, which helped correct his path a little. He had left Konoha a day ago. Luckily, nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Naruto said goodbye to Itachi and Shisui. They had a nice time in a small eatery, serving good tea and decent sweets. Not that Uzumaki was an ardent fan, but Itachi was, and the rest of them didn't want to stand in the way of this Uchiha getting his favorite rice balls. After eating dango with his friends, the white-haired boy accidentally wandered into the training grounds at the academy. At that moment, one of the classes was having practical classes there. Naruto, in fact, was about to move on, but he noticed Menma among the guys, which interested him. Of course, he was his blood brother after all. His Otudo was fighting against Sasuke. That was Itachi's brother's name, if his memory serves him right, and usual Nata remained loyal to him. Well, what he saw upset him greatly. Menma was losing dry, barely dodging Sasuke's blows, and there was no talk of counterattacks at all. And he expected more from the Uchiha, considering his status as the youngest heir to the founder's clan and the personality of his older brother. After a short observation, he nevertheless continued his journey to the exit of the village. This time, nothing distracted him, and Naruto safely left Konoha, only lingering for a couple of minutes on the rock with the Hokage's faces. The sight of his village in the light of the setting sun was so awe-inspiring that he simply couldn't help himself. Right now, Uzumaki just hoped that there wouldn't be a storm or something during his journey. No matter how good his chakra control or speed was, his SCC was being strained greatly from using such a small amount for so long. Kuni-san, the teenager called out, running was actually quite boring. Have you been to Uzushiogakure? Only when I was already sealed in Mito. She visited her family more than once, but it is difficult to learn anything from the subconscious. It is easier with your seal, although it isolates me a little more strongly, the fox's sleepy voice drawled. You're so boring, Naruto muttered with a chuckle. Then leave me alone, you boring person. Abandoning the idea of tugging the overgrown fox's tails, Uzumaki ran on, entertaining himself by expanding and narrowing his sensory range. The ocean space did not offer much variety or interesting large sources of chakra. The white-haired one tried to reach the bottom of the ocean. Apart from some particularly deep depressions, he could do so he was quite pleased with himself. Objectively speaking, his journey was somewhat reckless. If a storm started now, he wouldn't have much of a chance of surviving. However, in reality, it wasn't much better on the ship. Yes, the probability of drowning under the waves is less, but it depends on the size of the waves. But the ship itself moves slower. And a lone shinobi is unlikely to be attacked by pirates. Speaking of the latter, somewhere ahead Naruto felt several rather large sources of chakra. Although they were smaller than his. In fact, there weren't many people who had more chakra than him. So far, he hadn't overtaken only Kushina in this regard. Still, being a Jinchuriki has its advantages. As well as disadvantages, his poor control. When he finally saw several ships, several more minutes had passed. A fairly large merchant ship was being boarded by several smaller vessels. There were also flashes from large-scale raiden techniques, wood was burning and smoking from kadenjutsu, water was rising into the air, obeying the chakra of the ninjutsu creators. At this distance, he could only see everything well thanks to the dojutsu of the red-eyed clan, but his sensory abilities gave him an idea of what was happening no worse. After standing like that for a few minutes, Uzumaki turned to the side and ran further, making a large circle around the place of the massacre. This battle was not his business and certainly not his level. There was no point in risking his life by interfering in the Jonin battle. Although people could die there, he was an egoist and wanted to live no less. On the other hand, this was called prudence and calculation. Although in this case, just having a brain was enough to determine the difference in strength. Naruto hadn't expected to be so tired from running. It was quite exhausting to monotonously release tiny amounts of chakra for so long. However, watching what was unfolding before his eyes right now made him forget about his tiredness and watch in admiration. Several powerful currents collided and created huge whirlpools. Uzumaki watched them with awe. To end up in one of those would be very undesirable, so he had already thought about how he would cross. The white-haired man hoped that he would not break anything in the process. Starting to draw Kurama's chakra, he gradually created Kyuubi no Kuromo, and then tails began to appear. The burning chakra had a refreshing effect on the tired body, until it began to put a little pressure on the consciousness. Naruto stopped there. By this time, there were already 6 tails behind his back. Of course, all this was not done for nothing. The purpose of such a large-scale waste of his Aniki's powers was not to emit Kyuubi's chakra. No, in fact, everything is much simpler. When the island he needs is surrounded by various whirlpools, reaching 100 meters in diameter and accelerating to 60 kilometers per hour, whether you like it or not, you have to figure out how to safely, or at least relatively, get to the other side. So it turns out that for his goal he really needs acceleration, and a lot more power, to push off and jump. And it would also be desirable to push off and jump a couple more times. He is, of course, a capable guy, but even Hashirama could hardly jump such distances. Therefore, stepping back a little for a better acceleration, Naruto actively moves his limbs and spreads a considerable speed even for Jonin and pushes off. He did not flatter himself with hopes that he would be able to jump over all this mess, but Uzumaki was not going to suffocate in the whirlpool, so he created several clones in flight, from which he pushed off even further. And then again, and again, and again, until he tumbled head over heels into the water, several times closer to the shore than before. So, because the bottom was several times closer than before, and his speed was very, very high even for him, it's not that easy to practice using the Kyuubi chakra when it burns like a torch for anyone who wants it, so he simply didn't have enough practice. The white-haired man at full speed, only partially slowing down on the water, which, by the way, he also hit hard, and flew into the bottom. Keisu, Kurama ni, please help, Naruto groaned mentally. His head was splitting terribly from such a blow. He would be lucky if there were no Nukenin groups nearby. Who knows if Uzumaki's barriers were still intact or not, otherwise they would come for his soul soon. Carefully swimming out of the hole made by his own body, he was glad that the water was cool. It was just right for him now. True, the salt stung the wound on his head unpleasantly, but it was bearable. However, this did not prevent him from quickly reaching the surface and calmly breathing in the salty air. After getting out of the water, Naruto looked for a place where there were no rocks, mentally thanking Kami, Yami, Shinigami and all the gods that he didn't hit something like that when he landed and fell on the white sand. Although now was not the time for it, and he actually overextended himself, but he couldn't stop his curiosity from looking around. In addition to the relatively soft white sand, there was a huge amount of rocky formations here. Naruto assumed that there had been a cliff here, until part of it had been washed away by water over the centuries, leaving a place for sand. Why did he think so? Oh, just 70 meters away from him there were just such hills and cliffs several dozen meters high. Well, he had to admit, it was very, very beautiful. Shit, Naruto shouted, rising to his feet on reflex and doing a backflip, jumping back a couple of meters. Damn geysers, he grumbled when he realized what was happening and why a column of water shot up into the air right next to him. Okay, really, what are you lying around for? Having entered the water up to his knees, his clothes were already wet, so what difference did it make? Uzumaki washed the sand from his hair and dove in, wanting to clean his clothes a little too. Of course, with the rather powerful waves it was not so comfortable, but bearable. It was a pity about the clothes. To be honest, if you can't find a source of clean water, then you can throw everything away at once. On the other hand, if you seal the clothes, then they won't be able to become hard from the salt, because time doesn't pass in the seal. So, I had to stay on the beach longer, pulling off and sealing clothes and getting out a new set. Nothing out of the ordinary. A turtleneck with high long sleeves, pants tucked into shinobi sandals. And everything is black. Ha, well, you have some relatives. A chuckle suddenly thundered in the subconscious. The barrier around the village was self-healing after all. Will my blood be enough to get through or will I have to break in? Who knows, the fox answered thoughtfully. Come on, get moving with your knuckles toward the village. Well, what's left of it? Listen, Naruto began, heading deeper into the island. After all, he didn't know the exact location of the village either. Maybe I should put a FUNN on your cage. As soon as you start tormenting everyone, the sound suppression will turn on. I think it's a good idea, he suggested thoughtfully. You naughty bastard, Kurama snorted. It is what it is, Uzumaki chuckled in response. In fact, the island was not small. If he took into account what he had read from the elders' documents and the old maps he had found, it should not be much smaller than 180. There were many rocks on the island, and at first glance he could see 5 main ones. The largest one was probably higher than 4 kilometers. Naruto froze in place as the puzzle suddenly clicked into place in his head. Rocky formations on the shore. Active geysers. Enormous mountains, some of which were not covered in greenery despite the climate being downright conducive to it. A nervous laugh escaped his mouth. Bijou, there are active volcanoes here. At least one for sure. Keisu. One of the supposed volcanoes was probably extinct. Even visually, the 1.5 kilometer giant seemed very old, and after activating the Sharingan, he began to distinguish deep gorges, probably rivers. In addition, it was all covered in greenery. He wondered when this colossus had last erupted, and how huge it had been, but he could survive without this information. Another one, the tallest one, was presumably dormant. Judging by the fact that the volcano was covered in greenery, but the smoke from the crater gently hinted that the volcano was not extinct at all. Anyway, since he needed to look for a village here, and it wasn't easy to do that among the rocks, Naruto decided to climb this one. It was sleeping and tall, so there shouldn't be any danger. Purely theoretically, it would be very inconvenient if it suddenly woke up. Although it was a bit of a long and tedious process, it was worth it. The view was truly amazing, and Uzumaki even found a lake just below the top of the volcano. From there, he could see the ruins of Uzushio. It was strange to see the village of such a great clan destroyed. Even from his distance, although dojutsu helped him a lot, he could see piles of iron sand. There was no point in thinking about the person who could have left him here. Huge stone slabs are, on the contrary, holes left by the Tsuchikage. The other cage could not be tracked so easily. But the fact that they were here was clear as day. From here there was a view of 3 other volcanoes. Lava was slowly flowing down 2 of them. Fortunately, towards the ocean. Although, apparently, it always flowed there, expanding the island. One of them, which was only slightly lower than the dormant volcano, by the way, judging by the amount of relatively freshly dried lava, had erupted not so long ago. Maybe a year ago. The last of them was actively smoking and emitting geysers, but despite its obviously active state, it had not erupted for a long time. It had managed to acquire some greenery, although most of it was covered with streams of long-dried lava. After standing there for a few more minutes, Naruto had to admit that this was all very cool, but he needed to be closer to the ruins than he was now. So he headed towards the center of the island. Not that he was in any particular hurry. Uzumaki was planning on staying here for months, but he preferred to set up camp while the sun was still shining. Besides, he still had barriers to deal with. The descent did not take too long, so soon the white-haired man was peering at the kekai set by his clan and, biting his thumb, really hoped that his blood alone would be enough. That sucks, Naruto muttered when nothing worked. And how do you order me to open the barrier that was clearly not put up by brats like me? He asked the fox grumpily. Shoot the Bijudama. Ah, you can't, Kurama snorted, reminding him of the seal. Naruto plopped down on the ground, examining the barrier and thinking about how to remove it and what he could do with it. It was unpleasant to realize that such trifles could affect his plans. Although it was a very significant trifle, but still. He had spent so much time walking here, and now he had to sit under kekai and think about how to remove it. However, his plans often fell apart. He was used to it, so when a hole opened in the barrier and a team of masked shinobi surrounded him, he could only groan in defeat.